These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are CB Distillery, CBD for sleeping. More info at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. The Clean Phone Pro phone sanitizer and charger. More info at thenewdealshop.com. ExpressVPN, the VPN that just works. More information at expressvpn.com/Tom. X-Chair, changing the world one seat at a time. More information at xchairtom.com. Bloomsy Box, simply better blooms. More info available at bloomsybox.com, code TOM. And Boll & Branch Sheets, crafted for the common good. More info at bollandbranch.com, code TOM.
Our book for the Thom Hartmann Book Club today is A Nation Forged by Crisis, A New American History by Jay Sexton. And I'm reading from the introduction. This is page 9. The quest for national security and global power, America's shifting position in the international economy, and fluctuations in immigration have made the United States the nation that it is today. Americans' foreign relations have conditioned its history not only in their cumulative effects over the long haul, but also as a result of their volatility. In periods of crisis, America's position in the world has lurched in unexpected directions. For as inexorable as the rise of the United States appears in retrospect, there have been contingent moments in which the very existence of our nation was up for grabs. This is the essence of crisis. The world turned upside down, the known replaced by the unknown, panic reigning as people struggle to maintain their balance and shifts in the very ground beneath their feet. It came with a speed and ferocity that left men dazed, New York Times correspondent Elliot Bell wrote of Wall Street's catastrophic collapse in October of 1929. Quote, the market seemed like an insensate thing that was wreaking a wild and pitiless revenge upon those who thought to master it, end quote. Crises are contagious, spreading like viruses from one realm to another. It's not without reason that the word crisis was associated with medical conditions and health scares in the 19th century. Each of the periods under consideration in this book were less a singular crisis than a set of interlinked crises. A political crisis could trigger an economic panic, which in turn could intensify social conflict, and so on. As these pandemics spread through the body politic, crisis itself was normalized, becoming an almost accepted characteristic of an age. Just as foreign crises have spread to the United States, domestic ones have spilled across its borders, unsettling foreign countries and peoples, as well as reconfiguring America's connections to the world. Consider the fateful winter of secession that followed the 1860 election of Abraham Lincoln. The crisis over slavery that divided the Union into warring sections that led to a series of sharp reversals in America's position in the global system. The foreign capital that had rushed into the roaring American economy in the preceding decades suddenly began to flee. Indeed, more capital left the United States in 1860 to 1862 than came into it. Also a once-in-a-century occurrence. One of the world's most valuable commodities and America's largest exports, Southern cotton, was confined to the ports of the Confederacy as a result of Richmond's ill-fated diplomatic strategy, leading to unemployment and social unrest in the British textile town of Lancashire. The most unexpected reversal was how the national security that the United States had attained after the war against Mexico in the 1840s was suddenly imperiled, with European powers encroaching once again upon the Western Hemisphere. Meanwhile, the Confederate emissaries across the Atlantic were in search of alliance with Britain. Our country, Secretary of State William Seward lamented in early 1861, after having expelled all European powers from the continent, now threatened to relapse into an aggravated form of its colonial experience, and like India, Turkey, China, and Italy, become the theater of transatlantic intervention and rapacity. A wider view of American history that looks beyond the nation's borders brings into focus not only the migration patterns, economic flows, and international rivalries that have connected the United States to the world, but also those rare moments in which the very existence of the nation was in question. Perhaps none was more pregnant with implications than the autumn of 1877, when the fate of the Patriots' bid for independence hung in the balance. Having proclaimed their independence to the world the previous 4th of July, their cause had stalled on the battlefield and in the diplomatic courts of the old world. I think the game is pretty near up, Washington privately confessed at year's end. To accomplish their independence is not quite so easy as to declare it, the British philosopher Jeremy Bentham haughtily remarked. But then a series of events forever changed the course of modern history. The stunning Patriot victory at the Battle of Saratoga in October, the drafting of the Articles of Confederation in November that, for all its limitations, further demonstrated the political resolve of the Americans. And most of all, the alliance signed with France in February 1778, which provided the Patriots with the resources, military assistance, and naval power that ultimately tipped the scales in their favor. There are comparable Saratoga moments in other crises in U.S. history, as we shall see. These contingent moments played out in their own distinctive ways, but are joined by a common denominator that has been curiously forgotten in our age of U.S. global power. Foreign states and people have played decisive roles in the critical moments of American history. As we make our way through our own era of global instability, in an unprecedentedly interconnected world, there's perhaps no more important lesson from the past to keep in mind. Crisis may beget crisis, Franklin Roosevelt said, as his administration transitioned from battling the Great Depression to entering the Second World War. But the progress underneath does not wholly halt. It does go forward, end quote. Like so many of Roosevelt's public statements, this one reveals a truth even as it conceals others. The United States came out on the other side of its greatest crises as a stronger and more efficiently organized nation, as Roosevelt suggested. The process of mobilizing resources to counter threats catalyzed innovations in political economy, such as the creation of a national financial system during the Civil War, and the economic reforms of the New Deal. The book is A Nation Forged by Crisis by Jay Sexton.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Well, happy Wednesday. Michael Mann, one of the world's leading climate scientists, the guy who invented the idea of the hockey stick that Al Gore popularized, professor of climate science at UPenn, I believe it is, or whatever, the University there in Pennsylvania. He will be with us for the full hour, the second hour of our program today. We've got a big show, as they say, and a lot going on in the news today, and we will be getting to that as well. Got a new piece out in The Nation magazine that just went up. So we will get to all those things as we go through the day, but to start out our first hour, it's Wednesday first hour, Congressman Mark Pocan is with us. He represents the 2nd District of Wisconsin. He's the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. His website is pocan.house.gov, pocan.house.gov. You can tweet him at Rep. Mark Pocan. And he will be with us for the hour, taking your calls at 202-808-9925. And as they say in the radio business, the lines just opened. Congressman Pocan, so what's on your mind today, and what do you see on the legislative agenda and the news horizon that has you excited, worried, or both?
Yeah, boy, lots going on, Tom. I think the biggest thing for us right now is we're trying to finalize this bill to keep the federal government open, as well as a COVID relief bill. We had an update just this morning. Talks are still going on, and Republicans are still dragging their feet, but it looks like I think we'll be able to get to an agreement as long as they've got some things in there that work and some things that are bad aren't in there. And I think we're seeing some progress on that. One, we feel strongly there should be some stimulus or survival checks, because that's really what it's about, is survival. And as a progressive caucus, we had a call last night, and members were very supportive of saying that's got to be a must for anything to move forward. And then, of course, we're still concerned about any liability protections, and we also think we're moving forward on that. So, that's going to be crucial, happening either, this week, or if it has to go into early next week. Although, again, I think the hope is that we can just stay in Washington until it's done. And, in the meantime, I guess watching Mitch McConnell and some Republicans finally say on December, 16th, that Joe Biden got elected president. I guess better late than never, although it still shows the problem we have with converting a political party into a cult and then how to turn it back again. They're going to have some real issues moving forward.
How does this play out in Congress? I mean, I've never followed you around the halls of D.C. It's years ago, Congress was famously collegial. I'd say, certainly pre-Reagan and maybe even through the 80s. And then, particularly when Newt Gingrich came along in 94 and 96, it just became so hyper-partisan, polarized, and, friends and enemies and all this kind of stuff. Do you and other Democrats and progressives in particular actually have conversations anymore with your conservative colleagues? From the outspoken crazies like Jim Jordan to just the kind of run-of-the-mill ones. And if so, or if not, what does that say about our state of politics right now and the ability of Congress to get things done?
I have to answer that in two ways, Tom. One, pre-COVID, no, it's been gotten harder to do that. I mean, you could still run into people in the hallway. Jim Jordan, believe it or not, went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison the same 4 years I did. I hate to admit that because I love the University of Wisconsin-Madison, but something went wrong wherever he stayed. We had very different outcomes coming out of there. But, I've been friendly and I can talk to him and yet still strongly disagree. And you try to have those relationships. But COVID has been very different. I mean, we're operating Congress, the House, out of 10,000 different locations with our staffs working out of their homes, committee staffs working out of their homes. And it's just hard to do much of how we've operated. So a lot of power goes into leadership's hands to do some of the final negotiating on these bills. And I'm really looking forward to when we can get people vaccinated and get back to normal. And then maybe some of the Republicans will, quit drinking the Kool-Aid that Donald Trump's been pouring, and maybe we can get them to operate the way things used to be. But, my fear is now that we're starting to put QAnon people into Congress and Tea Party people are becoming the moderates, we're having some problems on the Republican Party side.
Yeah. Shades of Marine Le Pen here. Okay, well, let's pick up some phone calls, all right?
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay, Jessica in Chicago, you are on the air with Congressman Mark Pocan.
Good morning, gentlemen. I would like to know why we shipped out 2.9 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine is out. That's what we have shipped out to the people, the hospitals. But I want to know what's happening with the 6.4 million doses our country has. And I know the governors are getting 2 million to proceed with doing the vaccines, but what they really need to execute the 900 million doses, they really need $8.4 billion to get this going. And I watched this on Face the Nation this weekend on Saturday with Margaret Benner, and so these are facts. So thank you for all it. You two are great. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica.
Well, thank you, Jessica. And that's part of the bill, just getting a brief update this morning on where talks are. A lot of that is money for vaccines going to states that'll be in this next COVID bill. And I'm very convinced there will be a COVID bill. We just have to make sure it's a COVID bill that actually works for people and not just corporations like I think, maybe too much did in the CARES Act. And I do think that this will get expedited in every way we possibly can. I think everyone is on board to getting the vaccines out. I think the bigger challenge, quite honestly, Jessica, is making sure that people will get the vaccines, because right now the number of people who are saying they won't, from a wide variety of perspectives, is pretty troubling if we're going to actually get out of the situation we're in. So there should be funding in this COVID bill that'll help on that. Absolutely, the vaccines are getting out, although we know that we could have had more for the United States had Donald Trump handled it right a few months ago. But again, we're almost turning that page. I think I was told this morning it's something like 804 hours until Donald Trump's not president anymore. I guess we're counting by the hour at this point. And, let's just make sure we're doing the very best we can.
I'm tempted to translate that into minutes. Carol in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes, Congressman Pocan, I am interested in if we get these Senate seats, and it looks really good right now, the U.S. Senate seats, can the Progressive Caucus get a caucus good ideas like the UBI, Universal Basic Income, Medicare for All, $15 minimum wage, if we get all three branches of the government? Thank you.
Yeah, Carol, you're up. I mean, that is not just the $100,000 question. The $100 million question is if we pick up those Senate seats, even though the Senate has rules that still can slow things down significantly because of minority party representation, you'd be at 50-50. It'd still be very tight. But short of that, it's going to be much more difficult because you will have Mitch McConnell in the Senate. So we're going to have a much tighter margin in the House. So we don't know the final numbers yet, but it could be like 6 or 8 seats. And right now, with several people being appointed to the administration, we have even less than that. So we're skating on a pretty thin margin at this point to be able to get things to pass, because don't forget, we have to make sure that we get all the Democrats to support items that we put out there. But we just had some success last night. We pretty much said as a caucus that unless there's direct payments, we might vote against the rule on a COVID relief bill. And that was very helpful in Speaker Pelosi being able to move forward and get some direct payments. So absolutely there's things we can do, Carol, but the Senate, it's all about the Senate right now.
Amazing. Remarkable. Thank you. It's 15 minutes past the hour. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. He represents the We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Stick around. Middays with Mark. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Maverick in Edmonds, Washington. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hey, good morning, gentlemen. Congressman, you seem like a great guy, and I was really relieved to hear that your mom got through her illness okay. So that out of the way.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. It seems to me that science and conversation are the only two things that can save us from this COVID, and religion seems to be above reason. We know that churches are super spreader events. And to get to my question quickly, are there any atheists in Congress? Even one?
Yeah, actually, Jared Huffman absolutely has been outspoken, I think, an atheist. But more importantly, we have now a Free Thought Caucus. I'm a member of that. And we are trying to make sure that we're actually living by the separation of church and state in every possible way. So we have a number of members, including people who are of faith and some of us who don't follow religion. And it's been, I think, powerful to finally have that, because you're right. You know, what we've seen during COVID and watching, you know, what some churches have done, and I say churches, I should probably be lifting my fingers and waving them, because I think they were more concerned about the proceeds they were taking in than the parishioners who were getting sick. And, you know, that flies in the face, I think, of what they say they're for. Yes, in Congress we are starting to finally address some issues free thought perspective. We now have a caucus in place. We now have a caucus in place. Jared Huffman is the head of that. Jared Huffman is the head of that. Urge you to follow him. Urge you to follow him. Member of Congress.
Somewhere Thomas Paine. Contemporaries are smiling. Gustavo in Santa Barbara. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yes. Good morning. How you guys doing? My question is very quickly. I would like to know if
Gustavo
Trump, the
in Santa Barbara,
is going to pardon infinitely. Yes. Good morning. How you guys doing? My question is very quickly. I would like to
Gustavo,
know
I don't think there's a limit on how
Trump,
many
the president
is
is
not
going
like he's,
to pardon
there's a bag and at the bottom there's nothing left if you've given out too many. I think that's what we're watching right now. I personally am glad that his ego is so
Gustavo,
tremendous.
I don't
think there's a limit on how many the election results. Not like he's there's a bag and then at the bottom there's what happened if you've given out too many. I think that's what we're watching right now. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris am glad that his ego is so tremendous other bad things for this many days. So I'm pleased, but I can pretty much guarantee we are going to see more pardons coming out from this president. And the question will be, does he do anything as crazy as pardons?
Confederate states were not represented. These are illegitimate amendments. And oddly, one of the people who's at the forefront of this is Amy Coney Barrett. It's all over at ThomHartmann.com. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour. And David in Denver, Colorado, you are on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, thanks for having me on. Congressman, I'm curious as to what we're going to do in the next bill for COVID relief for our unhoused population. Because in Denver right now, our mayor is systematically killing our homeless population by sweeping them every other day, not providing them with any of the services that they need. And it's concerning to me that this guy's got this much power and what he's doing right now. I mean, we're in a large civil rights case that's going on today, actually right now as we speak, as they're in court. The governor's being sued, the mayor's being sued, and several other people have been named. And it's not getting it's not being talked about. And I just feel like they don't have a voice and they need a voice.
Yeah, I agree, David. I mean, we need to do much around not just homelessness, but also around evictions to make sure fewer people are homeless, given what's happening. We don't have the final language of what's going to be the agreement because they're still finalizing what this agreement's going to be around COVID. However, I think one thing that we're probably not going to like, from what I'm hearing this morning, is part of the trade-off to not get these terrible liability protections for big corporations is going to be some of the additional funding going, especially to municipalities, and some of that money probably would have gone to things like housing relief. So we may have to wait for when Joe Biden's president in trying to put another bill together when we have a better opportunity to do that. But unfortunately, state and local support, while there still is a number of funds that we understand will be going to states for vaccines, et cetera. Some of what we really wanted to do was the trade-off, I think, that Republicans have put for their liability protection, and we're going to probably have to wait a little longer for that. Now, that's not saying there's not that in this bill yet, because we haven't seen the final agreement, but I just hearing that about money going to local governments, that tells me we're not going to get as much for some programs that are really important.
Susan in Inglis, Florida, you're on the air with Congressman Mark Pocan.
Congressman, with this turnout of the inoculations for the two different manufacturers, Pfizer and Moderna, of their vaccines, I've heard so much about not mixing the two manufacturers' vaccines. And wouldn't it behoove a system that they could issue a card with the manufacturer, the lot, and the date of initial inoculation, and then their booster shots that people could carry around with them like they would Red Cross issue a blood donor card with your blood type? Wouldn't that expedite and help people, that are giving the vaccine, make sure that they don't have any mistakes in crossing manufacturers?
Yeah, Susan, I think that's a great suggestion, right? I think, as we're starting to get the vaccines out right now, we're focusing on those frontline workers. Next will be vulnerable populations of seniors and people with at-risk health issues. But I think you make a really strong point, because part of the difficulty of doing getting this vaccine out there to make sure we can go back to hopefully a new normal by May or June is that we have to have people getting not only the vaccine, but that second part of the vaccine that so far all of these are requiring. And of course, as you said, it has to be the same type of vaccine. So I'm not sure exactly if they're talking about cards or not, but I think you make a very valid suggestion.
Douglas in Dewey, Arizona, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I would like to bring up something. Voter purging in some recent elections has been like a tremendous problem. And is there anything we can do, like if they want to purge like 300,000 people, and like they did in the state of Georgia when Stacey Abrams ran, why not post them on the Secretary of State's website so that way friends and neighbors can contact each other, say, hey, your name's on this purge list, and I'll listen to your comments off the air. Thank you.
Yeah, Douglas, that's another great suggestion, although I would even take it a step further. Why are we actively trying to purge as many voters in some areas? Because often the areas that are trying to purge voters are doing it to try to select who's voting for their elected officials rather than the other way around, right? I think there's been so much abuse of these purge lists. We do address it in H.R. 1, the first bill we introduced this Congress, and will likely be the first bill we introduce next Congress again. And I do think we want to stop what we saw with many of these states in purging names, and we have that addressed specifically, not just in H.R. 1, but another bill where we trim back the provisions just to election reform, because H.R. 1 included campaign finance and ethics reform as well. So Congress is in full agreement with where you're at, Douglas, and I think that's the bigger question is, do we really need to do the purges like we're doing? And if you're going to do them, why wouldn't we do them in a sensible way?
Yeah, let me flag something for you. Now that Greg Palast has busted their purges and it's in court right now in Georgia, they've got a new strategy that Donald Trump has been promoting fairly loudly, and that is on mail-in ballots saying this signature doesn't look like it matches if it came from a black area in particular. And this is going to be the new strategy of the Republican Party to suppress the vote. You can take that to the bank, and that needs to get into your legislation as well, because that's, boy, they are
Thank you for that. That's a great point.
Yeah. Congressman Mark Pocan with us. Stick around.
Listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It's our national town hall meeting with Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls. We'll be back with more of your calls for the Congressman. Well, we're getting there slowly but surely, but we still haven't hit our fundraising goals, even our daily goals, much less our goal for the entire fundraising drive here. So we really need your help. If you've not contributed to Free Speech TV in the past, now is a great time to become a member of Free Speech TV and make a contribution. You can make a one-time contribution of whatever size you'd like. There are some premiums. I'll go over those in just a moment. Or you can make an ongoing contribution, or you can do both. You know, you can say, hey, I'd like that book about oligarchy when it comes out, autographed by Thom Hartmann. That would be great. I know somebody I'd like to read it, or I know somebody I'd like to give it to as a gift. And that's $120. So here's my $120. And oh, by the way, after you do that, in future months, going forward, just, take $10 a month off my credit card. Or whatever's, comfortable or appropriate for you, 15, 25, pick the amount. Each one of us has a different budget, shall we say, a different ability to help. But it's really needed right now. We really need your help right now. So please. Goodies that they offer with contributions, one-time contributions. With a $20 gift, you have your choice between the Proud Student of Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker or the Fight for Democracy sticker, the Free Speech TV Fight for Democracy sticker. With a $50 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV webcam cover or the really nice canvas tote bag. We've been using these as premiums for a couple of years now, although I think that this slogan on this one is new. But these canvas tote bags are really nice. They're really well made. And this one says, change never happens from the top down, channeling Margaret Mead. With a $75 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV black hat or the official Thom Hartmann Program mug, which is just like very cool, right? So that's with $75. With a $100 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV, 2 Free Speech TV face masks or the Quarantine 2020 with Free Speech TV tumbler, which I keep saying I think is going to be a collector's item someday. With a $120 gift, your choice of the Free Speech, Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, my book, The Hidden History of Monopolies, which is out right now. All of my books here are autographed by the author. Or the new book, my new book, which will be out in the spring, but you'll be one of the very first people to get it, The Hidden History of American Oligarchy. With a $240 gift, you can join us for our online meet and greet
which is great fun. I always enjoy them. And interesting, I meet some extraordinary people, and I know some of the people who participated in these feel the same way. Or the Free Speech TV hoodie. Or both of my newest books, The Hidden History of Oligarchy and The Hidden History of Monopolies. With a that's $240. With a $360 gift, there is the Thom Hartmann University Winter Box. That includes The Hidden History of Oligarchy, The Hidden History of Monopolies, a set of 2 face masks, and the Free Speech TV 2020 Quarantine Tumbler. And with a $1,000 gift, we are going to have a party when this thing is over, this pandemic. It's probably going to be another 6 months, 9 months, something like that, but it's going to happen. And you're invited. With a $1,000 gift, come to Portland, and we will hang out together. So those are the premiums. Let me highlight the books. The Monopoly book is, I think, Ralph Nader wrote the foreword for it and said he thought it was the best book on monopolies that had been written in decades. And the Oligarchy book is really about one of the biggest issues of our times. So there's a lot there. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and be sure to sign up for a regular monthly contribution. Thank you. On this week's Science Revolution, Viet Trong with Tom Steyer's Climate Justice joins the show with a vision for a green, red, and blue climate New Deal. That vision includes Native Americans, a blue New Deal for our threatened oceans, and a green New Deal for our coastal communities. Dr. Michael Greger joins us. Have you gained a few COVID pounds? In his new How Not to Diet cookbook, Dr. Greger tells how you can eat your way to a healthy, sustainable weight with plant-based meals. Terry Mills, president of the National Nursing Network, drops by on why a national nurse for public health is important. Plus, Laura Packard, the founder of Healthcare Voices, explains open enrollment under the ACA to help the 16+ million uninsured Americans get themselves enrolled. Tune into the Science Revolution wherever fine podcasts are found. Welcome back. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour. And Barbara in Chicago Heights, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Good morning. And how are you both this morning? My question is about the emergency use approval status for the cocktail that Rudy Giuliani just got, because, we have 3,000 people dying every day, but they're not getting this life-saving medicine. So what's the status of that?
Yeah, I honestly don't know what the status is, other than they are fast-tracking everything when it comes to COVID. And I want to say this is a giant asterisk. By fast-track, I don't mean cutting corners. It's just they're eliminating some of the time delays that you normally have in a process. Just like the vaccine, things have really, for the type of vaccine that is out there now, they've been in the works for 10 years, not specifically to COVID-19, but the type of vaccine that now they're able to put out there. So nothing has been rush to make it unsafe. I just want to put that part out because I think a number of people still think that. But in the case of Rudy Giuliani, it's unfortunately like so many people of privilege, they can get access to the best treatments that aren't even necessarily approved for everyone else yet. And I know that they are fast-tracking those, and I hope that everything like that will be available as soon as possible, and I do believe that is the goal of the FDA right now.
Joseph in Orlando, Florida. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Good morning. Good morning, Congressman. Thank you for your service in these difficult times. So the late Fred Thompson, who served in Congress and also served as an actor, many people don't know, towards the end of his life, he served as the spokesperson for the National Popular Vote movement. When he was asked why he did that, he said, basically, I just got tired of trying to explain to my 8- and 5-year-old grandchildren how someone who gets less votes than the other guy wins the election. So some intelligent people have studied the issue and looked at the Constitution, and they realized that there is a way to do this, to create a national popular vote rather than the system we have now, using the Constitution. Basically, their thinking is the Constitution gives each state the right to appropriate their electoral college people as they see fit. So they thought, well, let's just make a law and have each state vote on it simultaneously, and if we come up with enough states that can give us 270 electoral college votes, voila, then the person who gets the most votes nationally becomes the president. So
your question,
basically
Joseph.
says, yes, so my question, Representative Pocan, is I don't know how Wisconsin has gone. Have they gotten on board with this movement? And if not, are you supporting it? Anyone interested, just Google National Popular Vote to get the details.
Yeah, I do support it. Wisconsin won't because we have a gerrymandered legislature right now, and given what we just saw with all the lawsuits from Donald Trump, state by state, we saw how problematic. If someone wants to throw a wrench into the process, they can certainly try. The good news is, for the most part, we saw those cases thrown out. In Wisconsin, though, our Supreme Court actually heard it last weekend and ruled literally hours before our electors decided on Monday, and it was a 4-3 vote. We were one vote off from having, the Supreme Court justices be partisan hacks rather than following the law. So, I completely agree with you. We've had at least several instances in my recent adult life where the person who got the most votes didn't win the election, and trying to explain that to people doesn't make a lot of sense. I support your efforts, Joseph.
Brandon in Jacksonville, Florida. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
It's Jacksonville, Illinois. Much appreciated to you both.
Oh, Illinois. I'm sorry.
I was a first-time caller on the Bootstraps episode in 2016. I'm on disability after a 2-month coma between welding jobs that left me with a $321,000 bill. And since then, I've taken Thom Hartmann's "Tag You're It" to heart. I'm just filed for a full term on city council. I was elected to city council in 2019. I was elected precinct committee person in March of this year in the primary. I was appointed precinct committee person in 2018. I filed for state representative against incumbent in an 80% conservative area this November. And there's an effort going around. It's called Force the Vote. My tweet was retweeted by NFL Charger Justin Jackson and Jimmy Dore this weekend. It said 97 members of the Progressive Caucus, and none will hold their vote from Nancy Pelosi to get Medicare for all. 126 Republicans just asked SCOTUS to overturn the election. Republicans have tried.
Brandon, what's your question?
Over 70 times. I'm asking Representative Pocan if he would force the vote on Medicare for all. The CPC chair is now the author of that bill, 1384.
Got it. Thank you. Congressman?
Yeah, well, thank you, Brandon. First of all, congratulations on running for office and for being appointed to the city council. It's imperative having a seat at the table matters. So I'm glad you asked this because a few weeks ago someone asked this, and there's a former comedian with a YouTube show who for clickbait is putting out some really bad information about this, and I really would love to address it because I think what's really important is I am one of the co-sponsors of Medicare for All. Pramila Jayapal is the author of the bill. She is the chair of the Progressive Caucus, and we've got a caucus for Medicare for All. We want to get this done, and I think it'll be done in the next decade is what I'm going to predict. The problem is right now we have 118 sponsors to the bill. We need to get 218 votes in order to pass something. So I can tell you already that we don't have enough votes. So we can do what this person is recommending, but it's not strategic because what will happen is if you force a vote on something, this is why we don't put things on the floor just to lose, is you're going to make a bunch of people who don't support it vote no, and it's harder to ever get them to vote yes. So you don't want to have them publicly voting no. We need to get more people to support Medicare for All in Congress. The public is there, but we need to have the people lead on this and put pressure on people to co-sponsor the bill. But we don't need a list of who doesn't support it. I can already tell you. We have 118 sponsors. We don't have the votes to pass it on the floor of Congress, and I don't want to make people wind up voting no then that are going to be much more difficult to ever get them to yes. But this is a bad strategy that's put out there, and I think it's really more about getting clickbait than trying to pass the bill. But many good-hearted people who want to see Medicare for all are kind of saying, well, why aren't we doing this? Well, that's why we don't. There's many bills we don't put to the floor if you don't want them simply to lose. So that's why we're doing it. Also, if this person was serious about it, you'd contact the author of the bill, Pramila Jayapal, or the groups that have been leading on this, none of which support this effort, because it will hurt the cause in the long run. And this person also thinks it's okay if Kevin McCarthy becomes the speaker by withholding our vote for Nancy. But if you do that, the speaker sets every bill that goes onto the floor. That would be disastrous to everything we want to get done in the next 2 years. So there's a lot of illogic that's offered out there on this proposal. What we need people to do is help us get more people to be sponsors of that bill so we can indeed pass it. But attacking the greatest promoters of Medicare for all instead of going after people who should be supporting it is a misguided effort. And I think many good-hearted people, again, who want to see Medicare for all are listening to this. And I think I would recommend you help us get the sponsors we need so we can eventually pass this bill. But simply putting a bill on the floor, simply to lose so we have a list of who doesn't support it, we already have that by sponsors, and we need to be strategic, and there's a reason why the groups and the members of Congress who support this aren't jumping for this idea. This is an idea for one person who thinks they have a great idea. I just dealt with a guy for the last 4 years who is just like this. Instead, let's get people who aren't on the bill as sponsors. Let's get this done. Clearly, the public supports this. This pandemic has showed us the need for it, but to do something misguided that will hurt us in the long run is not strategy. It's simply selfish.
I think the theory is that if you put people on the record, you can use that to primary them and replace, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez did with, what was the guy's name that she replaced?
Joe Crowley.
Joe Crowley. Thank you. His record was pretty bad, and so that bad record provided a space for a conservative to take his place. Is there any credibility to that theory?
You already could do that, right? If they're not supporting it, you could, you know that, right? They're not a sponsor of the bill. You can ask them, would you vote for Medicare for all? And if they're not a sponsor, they're no. We already have the list. So that's not necessarily going to change those races. And that's why people like AOC are also saying the same thing that I'm saying, and why Bernie Sanders is saying the thing. But the same person is attacking AOC and attacking Bernie, calling them names. None of that gets us to Medicare for all. I want to get to Medicare for all, but we need more sponsors so we can ultimately have more votes to get to the 218.
Yeah, so to use a war analogy, as much as I dislike them, before you go to battle, make sure that you've got all the weapons and all the troops that you need, basically, is what you're saying.
Yes, and what we need are more sponsors of the bill, which we would love to have people help us get. Don't attack your friends. Go after the people who aren't there.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Thank you. It's 45 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Let's see here. Deborah in Grand Rapids, Michigan. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Tom. Just to let you know, I love your book reports, but you need to read out of your books a little more. Congressman, I haven't heard, and I wondered if anyone in Congress or any other governmental department has any information about how long the vaccines provide immunity. I know they're new, but it would be good to know that kind of information. So have you heard anything?
It's a great question, Deborah, and I don't think we know. In fact, I've heard Dr. Fauci say we're not sure yet. So this could be something where you're going to get immunized on a more regular basis. However, we also know that if enough people do get immunized, you can also help to make sure that COVID-19 goes away by that, and it won't be able to spread as easily. No, we don't know how long I think it's going to last for. The good news is we do know it's like 95% effective. We know that it's working, and it's going to be able to work to make sure that we can reopen our country in many ways. But I don't think we have the answer yet of how long it's going to be good for.
David in Spotswood, New Jersey. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, good afternoon. Nancy Pelosi, I mean, not to be blamed, she said that any stimulus bill, she said this prior to the election would be retroactive to September. I don't know what's coming out. I'm not clear, but it sounds like that the unemployment, the extra unemployment is going to be on a going forward basis. My question is that to lock out Joe Biden from doing the stimulus bill when he gets in? Thanks.
Yeah, David, it's not clear. We did ask what kind of support, and they're still negotiating this. So I don't have an answer for you on it. And it's as of just this morning, we asked that very question on how much would be available via unemployment and also on the stimulus or a survivor check. And it's still negotiated. So unfortunately, I can't give you a good answer.
Let's see here. Dylan in Saline, Michigan. We just have a minute, Dylan. You got a real quick question for Congressman Pocan, please?
I do. Thank you. Gentlemen, thanks for taking my call. Quick comment, see what you think. We know that the Republicans are trying to do this liability reform, so-called liability reform. Maybe we look at adding a sunset provision to it that could let us define it over a 6-month period and potentially prevent them from parlaying that into bigger reform. Also, it may allow us to add messaging where we know that the Republicans are sunsetting Donald Trump's tax cuts for working people. We could hammer that home as well. What do you think?
Yeah, Dylan, I'll tell you, I think the best if we can get there to be no liability provision, it would be the best thing. It's a manufactured issue, but it could have a lot of bad ramifications. There have been some people who've been awful employers, and to give them immunity, I think, would be a really bad idea. And it shows that Mitch McConnell's constituents are corporations, not actual people. So I understand what you're saying. If we're going to have it, let's scale it back. But if we cannot have it at all, that'd be the best.
Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour. Pocan.house.gov is his website. You can tweet him at Rep. Mark Pocan. He represents the 2nd District of Wisconsin in the U.S. House of Representatives and is co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. We'll be right back with more of your calls for Congressman Pocan in just a minute. You can help America return to democracy by telling friends and family how to listen to this and other great progressive programs. Tag You're It. Did you know that there have been 8 federal judges who have been convicted and removed from the federal bench? 15 altogether have been impeached. 8 have been removed from office since the beginning. 3 of them since 1988, including one judge, Thomas Porteous down in Louisiana, who was impeached and removed from office for signing false financial declarations under penalty of perjury, which it turns out it looks like Clarence Thomas did for quite a number of years when he did not disclose, as he is required by law to do, that his wife was taking hundreds of thousands of dollars from the Heritage Foundation. That and his perjury around Anita Hill and others, there were numerous witnesses that didn't even get called, could legitimately spark an impeachment of Clarence Thomas. We got a video about this over at ThomHartmann.com for supporters of our program. Check it out. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the day. Gene in Jackson, Missouri. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yeah, hi, Tom. Hi, Congressman. I was listening to you last week, and you talked quite a bit about the $15 minimum wage. And the question and the problem I have, first of all, I'm all for people getting an increase. If you go from right now, the federal is $7 and something, but if you just take that it's $8, you take a $7 increase. That's $14,400 a year increase to the minimum wage, and there's 28 million on minimum wage. There's 65 million on Social Security. Nobody says anything about Social Security. Social Security people. In 6 years, the largest increase I've got, $38 a month, which is not even $200 a year. The other thing, the prices are not going to remain the same. So now you got, instead of a $5 hamburger, you got $10 hamburger, and the seniors are got the same income trying to buy a $10 hamburger. And a lot of those people on minimum wage move back in with their grandparents, and they have to support them too. So what do you think about the disparity in it?
Yeah, Gene, so there's a number of fallacies in there, I think, just from what, often gets put out there when people try to attack increasing minimum wage. First of all, the bill increases it up to 2023, and that could change in the next Congress. But so it wouldn't automatically go to 15 instantly. So that would resolve some of it. Secondly, every time we've had an increase in the minimum wage in Wisconsin, for example, more people have entered the workplace, and we haven't had the problems that you brought up. Third, part of the increase of Social Security is tied to the Consumer Price Index and other issues, including salaries. So therefore, there would be some increases to that. And it's just not true that prices go up automatically, because you're going to have more money in the hands of people who are more likely to spend it, and that stimulates the economy and creates additional demand. So, I think the real issue for us is if we don't pick up those Senate seats, it's going to be hard to increase minimum wage with a Republican Senate, which is ridiculous because we've waited a decade to do it. One of the things that can happen, though, is Joe Biden could increase the minimum wage for federal contractors, and that would have put pressure on others to increase wages. So we have to look at every strategy we can to increase the wage, because I think it's ridiculous that it's been well over a decade and we're still on $7.35. And don't forget, for waiters and waitresses, for tip staff, $2.35 an hour. That's a ridiculous wage.
Yeah. Mike in Chicago, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Good afternoon or good morning, gentlemen. Today is my birthday. I am
Happy birthday.
Years. Thank you. And I'm 66 years old. And every day that I've been on this earth, they have been suppressing the black vote. Back before the time I was born, this thing has been going on. Why can't an organization, a group, or someone can file a lawsuit or an injunction to stop them from suppressing our votes? We know, we talk about it every election, what they do to the black vote. Everybody knows this. Why can't we stop the Republicans from doing this? We have a right. We have a right as Americans. It made me think about the coach from the Clippers, who made that comment about why do we love this country when this country don't love us? Why do we stick our necks out, our lives out for this country, and it won't return the love and affection that we have for this country? They don't return it. They do everything that they can to stop us from voting. It's not
great question,
fair.
Mike, thank you very much for the question.
Yeah, Mike, again, happy birthday to you. And you're exactly right. The problem is they're clever how they do it. They don't just say they're doing it because they're racist or because they don't want African Americans to be able to vote. They always cover it in something else, usually about some manufactured fraud. And as Tom just mentioned, now it's about matching signatures. They're always going to find a way to try to pick their voters rather than the way it's supposed to be, voters picking their elected officials. That's why we did the bill called H.R. 1, which is the most comprehensive campaign finance, ethics, and elections reform bill ever introduced. We have to put forth provisions that deal with this across the country so that you don't have whack-a-mole, state by state, going after people, trying to kick people off of ballots or off of voting lists, etc. That's why I introduced a constitutional amendment to guarantee a right to vote, to make it harder for any unit of government to go after someone's ability to vote, because we don't actually have an explicit right in the Constitution right now. So you pointed out the right problem, Mike. I hope by your next birthday we can try to solve this. A lot will depend on what happens in Georgia, but I think it's a rather disgusting and sad state of political affairs that you want people not to vote in elections in order to try to win.
Congressman, we just have 15 seconds. Thoughts on the coming week?
Just there's going to be a lot of activity around COVID, Bill, and, follow Congress and tell them that you want survivor payments to go out. If we're going to help corporations, we can help people.
Amen. Congressman Mark Pocan, thanks so much for being with us today. It's always great having you on.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We will be back. We're going to be talking with Michael Mann for the hour. Stick around. It's going to get fascinating. We're going to talk climate science. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are CB Distillery, CBD for sleeping. More info at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. The Clean Phone Pro phone sanitizer and charger. More info at thenewdealshop.com. ExpressVPN, the VPN that just works. More information at expressvpn.com/Tom. X-Chair, changing the world one seat at a time. More information at xchairtom.com. Bloomsy Box, simply better blooms. More info available at bloomsybox.com, code TOM. And Boll & Branch Sheets, crafted for the common good. More info at bollandbranch.com, code TOM.
Well, we're getting there slowly but surely, but we still haven't hit our fundraising goals, even our daily goals, much less our goal for the entire fundraising drive here. So we really need your help. If you've not contributed to Free Speech TV in the past, now is a great time to become a member of Free Speech TV and make a contribution. You can make a one-time contribution of whatever size you'd like. There are some premiums. I'll go over those in just a moment. Or you can make an ongoing contribution, or you can do both. You know, you can say, hey, I'd like that book about oligarchy when it comes out, autographed by Thom Hartmann. That would be great. I know somebody I'd like to read it, or I know somebody I'd like to give it to as a gift. And that's $120. So here's my $120. And oh, by the way, after you do that, in future months, going forward, just, take $10 a month off my credit card. Or whatever's, comfortable or appropriate for you, 15, 20, 5, pick the amount. Each one of us has a different budget, shall we say, a different ability to help. But it's really needed right now. We really need your help right now. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and help Free Speech TV. It's a great television network. Help Free Speech TV really make this work. And also, please, the other thing that you could do that's a big help for all of us, but especially for this television network, for Free Speech TV, is to let your friends know about Free Speech TV. And, tell them about my program or Randy's program or Democracy Now! Or, Sonali. I mean, there's just there's great programming on this network. And more people need to know about it. You can help. So there's all these things that we can do. But right now, we've got to focus like a laser because we've just got a couple days left. If we hit our goals, then Andrew from San Diego is going to match it, or is going to toss in another $10,000 to push us over the top. That will really help a lot. But first, we have to hit our goal, and we're not there yet. The other reason to hit the goal, aside from Andrew's matching grant, as it were, his contribution, is the fact that we need to keep this network going. We need to keep the lights on. We need to keep people in Denver employed. It's pretty straightforward stuff. When you're funded by your viewers have to kick in. And so please, if you can, I realize, many of you watching just don't have the ability right now. I honor that. But I also know that a lot of people watching right now, listening to my voice right now, have never contributed to Free Speech TV. In fact, the majority of people who watch this program have never contributed to Free Speech TV. And here's your chance. Here's a great opportunity. And you will get something out of it beyond just a really good feeling that you've helped out and that you've been part of the solution and not the problem. You'll also connect with a whole new network is not quite the right word to describe a television network, but you'll become part of something that's really extraordinary, this television network. So the goodies that they offer with contributions, one-time contributions, with a $20 gift, you have your choice between the Proud Student of Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker or the Fight for Democracy sticker, the Free Speech TV Fight for Democracy sticker. With a $50 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV webcam cover or the really nice canvas tote bag. We've been using these as premiums for a couple of years now, although I think that this slogan on this one is new. But these canvas tote bags are really nice. They're really well made. And this one says, change never happens from the top down, channeling Margaret Mead. With a $75 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV black hat or the official Thom Hartmann Program mug, which is just very cool, right? So that's with $75. With a $100 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV, 2 Free Speech TV face masks or the Quarantine 2020 with Free Speech TV tumbler, which I keep saying I think is going to be a collector's item someday. With a $120 gift, your choice of the Free Speech, Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, my book, The Hidden History of Monopolies, which is out right now. All of my books here are autographed by the author. Or the new book, my new book, which will be out in the spring, but you'll be one of the very first people to get it, The Hidden History of American Oligarchy. With a $240 gift, you can join us for our online meet and greet, which is great fun. I always enjoy them. And interesting, I meet some extraordinary people, and I know some of the people who participated in these feel the same way. Or the Free Speech TV hoodie. Or both of my newest books, The Hidden History of Oligarchy and The Hidden History of Monopolies. With a that's $240. With a $360 gift, there is the Thom Hartmann University Winter Box. That includes The Hidden History of Oligarchy, The Hidden History of Monopolies, a set of 2 face masks, and the Free Speech TV 2020 Quarantine Tumbler. And with a $1,000 gift, we are going to have a party when this thing is over, this pandemic. It's probably going to be another 6 months, 9 months, something like that, but it's going to happen. And you're invited. With a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and we will hang out together. So those are the premiums. Let me highlight the books. The Monopoly book is, I think, Ralph Nader wrote the foreword for it and said he thought it was the best book on monopolies that had been written in decades. And the Oligarchy book is really about one of the biggest issues of our times. So there's a lot there. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and be sure to sign up for a regular monthly contribution. Thank you.
Wars by General Smedley Butler.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
The second hour of our program. On the line with us is Dr. Michael Mann, Distinguished Professor of Meteorology, the Director of the Earth Systems Science Center at Penn State University, member of the National Academy of Sciences, author of numerous books, including The Madhouse Effect, How Climate Change Denial is Threatening Our Planet, Destroying Our Politics, and Driving Us Crazy, and his new book, which will be out in just a week or 3, called The New Climate War. And he's also the recipient of the Tyler Prize. Michael Mann with 2 N's. .net is his website, and you can tweet him at Michael E. Mann with 2 N's. And Professor Mann, welcome back to the program. It's great having you, and thank you for doing a long-form conversation with us today. I'm really looking forward to digging into this. I'd like to start out with, you've been in this business for a lot of years. And I'm kind of personally curious what led you into this, but also at what point You're the inventor is probably the wrong word, but the guy who is credited with coming up with the hockey stick, this exponential growth in global warming if we start hitting certain points that Al Gore made so very, very famous, and you played a role in that as well. Was there a turning point for you in your career where it was like one of these oh my God moments?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Always good to be with you, my friend. It's funny when you say I've been in this for years. It doesn't feel like it's been such a long period of time, but it really has. It's more than 2 decades now since we published the so-called hockey stick curve. And so I have been on the front lines of this battle now for decades, the battle to inform the larger public discourse over climate change, over the threat that it represents and what we can do to address it. If there was a turning point or a pivotal moment, I suppose it would be in the wake of our publication of that first article in the journal Nature back on Earth Day 1998, April 22nd, 1998, when we published the first original version of the so-called hockey stick curve. And it got lots of media attention. But more than that, it started to get attention, I would say unwanted attention from fossil fuel interests, those promoting them, bad faith efforts to discredit the hockey stick curve because of what it said, because it spoke so clearly to the reality and the threat of climate change. And as such, it represented a threat to those powerful vested interests, the fossil fuel industry and those promoting their agenda. And so I found myself, as a mild-mannered scientist who had studied math and physics, I had never prepared literally for what you might call warfare. I never imagined, in my studies, in the scientific work that I did, that I would be subject to bad faith attacks by bad actors looking to discredit me and the hockey stick curve through whatever means possible, looking to intimidate me, whether that meant hostile congressional hearings by climate change denying senators and congressmen, or nasty editorials in the Wall Street Journal, or defamatory attacks on Fox News. That your training as a scientist in math and physics does not train you for that sort of combat. But over time, I've learned really to embrace that opportunity that it's given me to inform this larger dialogue. And so no regrets when it comes to where I've ended up. But sure, I've got battle scars to show for it.
Yeah. I mean, we're both on the receiving end of a lot of that kind of stuff. You in a much larger way, in a much larger universe. Was there a time prior to 20 years ago when you published the hockey stick, was there a time when you were unaware of how dire the situation could become if unchecked? And if so, what woke you up?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. It's a good question. In the early 90s, when I was starting my graduate work, I was actually a graduate student in physics, and eventually switched into the Department of Geology and Geophysics to pursue earth science research and climate research. But I started out as a theoretical physicist, and that was at Yale University at the very end of the 1980s. And at the time, the presidential science advisor to George H.W. Bush, President George H.W. Bush, was D. Allen Bromley, a conservative nuclear physicist from Yale, who, in fact, came back to Yale University while he was serving as science advisor to give a lecture to us physicists, us fellow Yale physicists. And I still remember that lecture where he lambasted climate models and criticized climate research. Of course, at that point, he was advancing an agenda of disinformation, efforts to undermine public faith in the science of climate change. And that meant that a conservative presidential science advisor saw it as part of his mission to discredit climate research to a group of mostly young physics graduate students like myself. Several years later, I would find myself actually in that area of research. And I never forgot the fact that there was this whole culture in physics and other fields, in engineering, of scientists who were adversarial when it came to climate science, and not because of the science, but because of the ideology. There was sort of a conservative streak, and my colleague Naomi Oreskes has written, eloquently about sort of how climate change denial sort of had as its origins these Cold War physicists who feared anything that was a threat to principles of liberty and freedom, and they saw climate change as such a threat for ideological reasons. And for that reason, in the culture of physics and engineering and some other fields, there was this distrust of climate science. And I literally transitioned from somebody who was within one of those fields in the world of theoretical physics to an earth scientist, to a climate scientist. But I never forgot the frame of mind, the mind frame that I had as a young physicist. And that, I think, has served me well when it comes to understanding the origins of denialism.
Isn't it sort of putting, I don't know if lipstick on a pig is a sexist metaphor? It probably is, but you know what I'm talking about. Isn't it to say that this is an ideology? I mean, isn't the simple reality here, Dr. Mann, that there are a few billionaires who made their money off fossil fuel? The Koch brothers are probably the most famous, but they're certainly not the only ones. Not to mention an entire industry, ExxonMobil at the front of it, who want to continue to make money off fossil fuels. They're sitting on trillions of dollars of oil that's still, and natural gas and coal that's still in the ground. Yep. And this isn't really about ideology. This isn't about high principles. The whole liberty thing is BS. It's all about money.
Yeah, I think that's right, Tom. And it's important, though, to distinguish between the larger forces, the puppet masters, those pulling the strings, and they are conservative interests of fossil fuel industry, the Koch brothers, who have, literally who are invested in, hundreds of billions of dollars invested in fossil fuels. So they have an obvious profit motive, and that's been the primary reason that the fossil fuel industry has literally thrown tens of millions of dollars at this massive, you might argue, the largest, best organized, most well-funded disinformation campaign in the history of human civilization, the campaign to discredit the science of climate change, to deny climate change. But what's also important to understand, and this is what Naomi speaks to in Merchants of Doubt, is that there were individuals who were prone to buying into that, who were very useful idiots, as it were, because their ideology prepared them to become pawns for those interests.
That makes a lot of sense. We're talking with Dr. Michael Mann, distinguished professor of meteorology and the director at the Earth Systems Science Center at Penn State University. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Dr. Mann's new book, The New Climate War, is just about out. It's available for pre-order right now wherever you find fine books. So, Dr. Mann, we have about 4 minutes till we hit another break. I was wondering for people, we started, right off talking about the hockey stick, and there are probably a lot of people watching or listening who are going, what's the hockey stick? They haven't seen Al Gore's movie, for example. I mean, it was a while ago. You want to give us an overview of what this is?
Sure. Thanks, Tom. So, we only have about 150 years of widespread surface temperature measurements around the planet, and that allows us to estimate quite confidently how much we've warmed over that time frame, over the last century and a half. But to place that warming in a longer-term context, to understand just how unusual it might be, and by implication, how much it might have to do with what we are doing, with the burning of fossil fuels and other human activities that are elevating the concentration of carbon pollution in the atmosphere. To put that warming in a broader context, we need to turn to natural archives like tree rings and corals and ice cores and cave deposits, stalagmites and stalactites, All of these things, ocean sediments, they can tell us something about the ancient climate. And so it's sort of a puzzle to solve. Can we put together the clues from all of these disparate lines of natural evidence to reconstruct how the climate changed in the more distant past? And the hockey stick was really the first, it was a term that was given to the result of our efforts to do that. We reconstructed temperatures over the past 1,000 years. That's as far back as we could go with the data that we had. And when you averaged over those temperature patterns to produce a single number, the temperature of the northern hemisphere for that year, and you plotted it over time, what you saw was that there was this sharp uptick over the past century and a half that had no precedent as far back as we could go. And visually, it looks like an upturned hockey stick, with the blade being the unprecedented warming that we've seen over the past century or so. And I think because it told a simple story, right? You didn't need to understand the physics of the climate system, the mathematics, the intricacies of the science to understand what this curve was telling us, that there was something unprecedented taking place today in our climate. And by implication, it obviously has something to do with us, with the burning of fossil fuels. And so it became a very potent image in the climate change debate, and that made it a threat, of course, to those powerful vested interests who want us to remain addicted to fossil fuels.
Yeah, and then they came after you. And your new book is not out yet. I haven't seen it. Is that the essence of the new climate wars?
Well, we have to fix that, Tom. Remind me, and we'll send you out a copy as soon as possible. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, that's really what the new climate war, it's about the evolution now. As the evidence becomes so obvious to the person on the street, we see the images, on our television screens, in our, social media feeds. The impacts of climate change are no longer subtle, right? We're seeing them play out in real time. So that means outright denial is no longer tenable by those forces of inaction. And so we'll talk about the techniques, the tactics that they're now using instead.
Yeah, we'll do that on the other side of this break. Dr. Michael Mann is with us from Penn State University. His new book, The New Climate War. We'll be right back. Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. We're available on SiriusXM, Free Speech TV, Pacifica, commercial stations nationwide, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, on the Thom Hartmann app, and you can even tell your smart speaker to listen to the Thom Hartmann Program. So we've got a new video up over at thomhartmann.com for folks who are supporting the program about how big pharma, the big pharmaceutical companies, might be the lever that the healthcare industry uses to destroy Medicare for all, or even a public option as we move into and toward the Biden administration. And how do they do that? Well, they're spending $30 billion a year on advertising. The United States is the only country in the world, the only developed country in the world, that allows drug companies to advertise with very, very few restrictions on television. Only one other country, New Zealand, allows any kind of drug advertising on television. But in the United States, the door is largely wide open. And as a result, all of the television networks are hooked on money from big pharma and big health, as it were. You can check out all the details over at thomhartmann.com with our new video for the supporters of our program. Thank you. Dr. Michael Mann is on the line with us. We are talking the new climate war and climate change in general here for the hour. Dr. Mann, your new book, which will be out in a few weeks, The New Climate War, it talks about how essentially there's a whole new set of strategies that the fossil fuel billionaires and the fossil fuel corporations are bringing to the table, if I understand that correctly. You want to lay that out for us?
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. So, as I was saying before, the impacts of climate change are now so obvious to the person on the street that it just isn't credible to deny that something's happening. So the forces of inaction, or the inactivists, as I like to call them, and I call them in the book, have turned to a whole new set of tactics in their effort to prevent this necessary transition from fossil fuels, to block efforts to transition towards renewable energy. And, it includes a whole array of really somewhat nefarious tactics, such as trying to foment division within the climate advocacy community online, using trolls and bots to get climate activists fighting with each other over, their vision of how we attack this problem, getting them fighting with each other so that climate advocates don't speak with a coherent, unified voice. And one of the ways they do that, by the way, is by getting people to argue about personal behavior, individual behavior, your carbon purity. Are you, do you eat meat? Do you fly? Have you had children? And if they can get us, again, arguing with each other, then we're not speaking coherently with a unified voice demanding action of our policymakers. But the other reason for getting us to debate, our travel and food choices and our individual behavioral choices, lifestyle choices, exactly, is because they want to deflect attention away from the needed systemic solutions, policies, right, legislation, actions by our executive to incentivize renewable energy, to put a price on carbon so that polluters have to pay for their pollution. They don't want to see those systemic solutions because that's really what's going to ultimately accelerate the transition from fossil fuels. So they've deflected attention instead to individual behavior. Also, fomenting doom and gloom, despair mongering. There is an increasing sector, increasingly large sector within the community of climate advocates, of individuals who have become convinced that it's too late to do anything, and they've fallen into despair and
this is
doom
the Guy
mongering.
McPherson crowd you're talking about? Yeah,
well,
let's just go into hospice.
Yeah, there's 10 years left and all life on Earth will be extinct and there's nothing we can do about it, which is an argument actually made by Guy McPherson. So he's an excellent example of that phenomenon. And if you really believe that there's nothing that you can do about the problem, then it leads you down that same path of inaction as outright denial, right? And the forces of inaction, fossil fuel interests and those promoting them, they don't care about the path you take. They just care about the destination. They want you to end up in a position of inaction, of hopelessness, despair, or just disinterest. And so we have to recognize these tactics. We have to recognize the false solutions. That's another one of the fronts in this new climate war, promoting so-called solutions that aren't real solutions. Planting trees, that can help at the margins, but it's not fundamentally going to address the problem at its core. Or techno fixes, right? Shooting stuff into the stratosphere to block out sunlight to try to cool the planet back down, or dumping iron into the ocean to fertilize algae. What could possibly go wrong when we start tampering in an uncontrolled way at a massive planetary scale? So these are all efforts to divert attention and to divert us from taking the necessary steps, policy-wise, of solving this problem systemically. And so we need to recognize that those are the tactics that are being used, and to not become, unwitting victims, unwitting agents, really, in this new climate war. When we fight with each other online over our purity, lifestyle purity, we're playing into their tactics. When we exclaim that it's too late to do anything, that we're effed and there's nothing we can do about it, again, they win. the polluters win because they just don't want us to unite and demand action and act.
Well, let's dig into what we can do, what the situation is, where it might go, and all those sorts of things right after the break. We're talking with Dr. Michael Mann, his new book, The New Climate War. Check it out wherever you find fine books. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
One of the leading climate scientists in the world, Dr. Michael Mann. We'll be right back with us. Well, we're getting there slowly but surely, but we still haven't hit our fundraising goals, even our daily goals, much less our goal for the entire fundraising drive here. So we really need your help. If you've not contributed to Free Speech TV in the past, now is a great time to become a member of Free Speech TV and make a contribution. You can make a one-time contribution of whatever size you'd like. There are some premiums. I'll go over those in just a moment. Or you can make an ongoing contribution, or you can do both. You know, you can say, hey, I'd like that book about oligarchy when it comes out, autographed by Thom Hartmann. That would be great. I know somebody I'd like to read it, or I know somebody I'd like to give it to as a gift, and that's $120. So here's my $120. And oh, by the way, after you do that, in future months, going forward, just take $10 a month off my credit card, or whatever's comfortable or appropriate for you. 15, 25. Pick the amount. Each one of us has a different budget, shall we say, a different ability to help. But it's really needed right now. We really need your help right now. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and help Free Speech TV. It's a great television network. Help Free Speech TV really make this work. And also, please, the other thing that you could do that's a big help for all of us, but especially for this television network, for Free Speech TV, is to let your friends know about Free Speech TV, and tell them about my program or Randy's program or Democracy Now! Or Sonali. I mean, there's just there's great programming on this network, and more people need to know about it. You can help. So there's all these things that we can do, but right now we've got to focus like a laser because we've just got a couple days left. If we hit our goals, then Andrew from San Diego is going to match it, or is going to toss in another $10,000 to push us over the top. That will really help a lot. But first we have to hit our goal, and we're not there yet. The other reason to hit the goal, aside from Andrew's matching grant, as it were, his contribution, is the fact that we need to keep this network going. We need to keep the lights on. We need to keep people in Denver employed. It's pretty straightforward stuff. When you're funded by your viewers have to kick in. And so please, if you can, I realize, many of you watching just don't have the ability right now. I honor that. But I also know that a lot of people watching right now, listening to my voice right now, have never contributed to Free Speech TV. In fact, the majority of people who watch this program have never contributed to Free Speech TV. And here's your chance. Here's a great opportunity, and you will get something out of it beyond just a really good feeling that you've helped out and that you've been part of the solution and not the problem. You'll also connect with a whole new network is not quite the right word to describe a television network, but you'll become part of something that's really extraordinary. This television network. So the goodies that they offer with contributions, one-time contributions, with a $20 gift, you have your choice between the Proud Student of Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker or the Fight for Democracy sticker, the Free Speech TV Fight for Democracy sticker. With a $50 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV webcam cover or the really nice canvas tote bag. We've been using these as premiums for a couple of years now, although I think that this slogan on this one is new. But these canvas tote bags are really nice. They're really well made. And this one says, change never happens from the top down, channeling Margaret Mead. With a $75 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV black hat or the official Thom Hartmann Program mug, which is just like very cool, right? So that's with $75. With a $100 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV 2 Free Speech TV face masks, or the Quarantine 2020 with Free Speech TV tumbler, which I keep saying I think is going to be a collector's item someday. With a $120 gift, your choice of the Free Speech Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, my book, The Hidden History of Monopolies, which is out right now. All of my books here are autographed by the author. Or the new book, my new book, which will be out in the spring, but you'll be one of the very first people to get it, The Hidden History of American Oligarchy. With a $240 gift, you can join us for our online meet and greet, which is great fun. I always enjoy them. And interesting, I meet some extraordinary people, and I know some of the people who participated in these feel the same way. Or the Free Speech TV hoodie. Or both of my newest books, The Hidden History of Oligarchy and The Hidden History of Monopolies. With a that's $240. With a $360 gift, there is the Thom Hartmann University Winter Box. That includes The Hidden History of Oligarchy, The Hidden History of Monopolies, a set of 2 face masks, and the Free Speech TV 2020 Quarantine Tumbler. And with a $1,000 gift, we are going to have a party when this thing is over, this pandemic. It's probably going to be another 6 months, 9 months, something like that, but it's going to happen. And you're invited. With a $1,000 gift, come to Portland, and we will hang out together. So those are the premiums. Let me highlight the books. The Monopoly book is, I think, Ralph Nader wrote the foreword for it and said he thought it was the best book on monopolies that had been written in decades. And the Oligarchy book is really about one of the biggest issues of our times. So there's a lot there. So please call now, 877-378-8680. And be sure to sign up for regular monthly. Thank you. The Hidden History of Monopoly tells how Robert Bork, that guy from the Reagan era, transformed corporate America and destroyed the American dream. So John Kasich was recently on CNN talking about how Democrats need to be listening to rural America, words to that effect. No, I think Democrats need to be talking to rural America and reminding rural America that it was a Democratic president that got them Social Security. It was a Democratic president that brought electricity to rural America, the RTA through, or the REA rather through the Franklin Roosevelt administration. It was the Democratic Party who brought phones to rural America. It was the Democratic Party that brought Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and public education to rural America, subsidized all those things. Democrats don't need to be listening to rural America. They need to be talking to rural America. There's over 1,500 right-wing radio stations in rural America talking smack all the time, 24/7, and none in rural America carrying a progressive message. That's what Democrats need to be paying attention to. You can check out our new video on this over at thomhartmann.com. Dr. Michael Mann is on the line with us for the hour. We're talking deep science here and climate science. He's the Distinguished Professor of Meteorology and the Director of the Earth Systems Science Center at Penn State University, member of the National Academy of Sciences, author of numerous books, including The Madhouse Effect, recipient of the Tyler Prize, his newest book, The New Climate War, his website, michaelmann with 2 N's.net, and his Twitter handle, Michael E. Mann with 2 N's. And Dr. Mann, to continue our conversation, we were talking about what, the false, they started out by saying, oh, there's no such thing as climate change, and then it kind of morphed into, well, if it is, it's because the solar flares are heating up or something like that. Or it's just part of nature's cycles. Don't you know we have these things every couple tens of or hundreds of thousands of years? And you've pretty successfully blown all that apart. And so now they're changing the direction of their attacks to what you got on an airplane last week? Let's talk about that. And but what are the things that we really need to do in order to control our climate? And if we fail to do these things, what will be the result? Let's deal with these. I don't know which order you want to take those questions, because one certainly leads to the other.
Yeah, so, and in fact, you touched on something another point I wanted to make in the context of these tactics that the forces of inaction, the inactivists are using. When they get us pointing fingers at each other and they distract us by getting us arguing over lifestyle choices, that, of course, aids them in their effort to block climate action, to depress enthusiasm for action. But moreover, and we have a mutual friend, Leo DiCaprio, who, of course, is very prominent. He has a huge, a huge public profile and is very influential. His Academy Awards speech actually commanded more attention for the issue of climate change than any other moment in recent history. More people heard about climate change from his acceptance speech than through any other means at any other time. And there were measures that there was more online discussion about climate change in the wake of that. And so he's very influential. He has served as an opinion leader for sort of awakening the public to the reality and threat of climate change. And as such, he's a threat. He's a threat to the inactivists. And so something else that they do is to accuse, celebrities, climate-focused celebrities like Leo DiCaprio of being hypocrites and being hedonists, flying around on a jet. How can you say you care about climate change? And using really disingenuous lines of attack to discredit him as a messenger, right? To paint him as a hypocrite, when in fact, if you look at how he lives his life and how he's devoted his life to this issue, of course, he's done as much, if not more than anybody, to raise awareness and to try to do something about climate change. But they want to sort of paint him as a hypocrite, to discredit him as a messenger, to make him less effective as a messenger. And so it's sort of a threefer, if you think about it. They get us pointing fingers at each other and fighting, so they divide us. It's divide and conquer. They distract attention from the need for systemic solutions by focusing on individual behavior as if that's the ultimate solution to the problem. And they discredit some of the most important messengers. Now, you ask, okay, and that was a long-winded sort of follow-up, but to get to your other question about what do we need to do now? Well, we've got an amazing opportunity. We just voted out, the worst climate offender in the history of the United States when it comes to the presidency, a president in Donald Trump who denied that climate change was real, pulled out of the Paris Treaty, blocked our own domestic efforts to reduce our carbon emissions, did everything he could to dismantle the environmental achievements of the prior administration, of the Obama administration, and even past Republican administrations. So there's a lot of damage that needs to be undone, damage control. And the incoming Biden administration will need to restore regulations that have been stricken from the books. We'll have to make sure that we once again enforce the policies that limit carbon pollution by coal-fired power plants and methane leaks from the natural gas industry. We need to enforce those policies that are already on the books, those laws that are already on the books. We need to honor our international commitments. And that's really the first thing that Joe Biden did, was to signal that he would rejoin the Paris Agreement. And they're in the process of doing that. But hey, it's 5 years later, and Paris, or at least those initial Paris commitments, are no longer enough. So the United States now has to once again lead. It has to lead the international effort to not only honor those commitments of existing, treaties, the Paris Treaty and the commitments that various countries made, but to ratchet up those commitments, because we're not yet on a path of limiting carbon pollution below levels that will lock in truly catastrophic climate change. We've got a lot of work left to do, and that means the Biden administration can not only undo the damage that was done, but really now has to lead and has to move forward. And there's an indication that they're doing that. He's appointed John Kerry as the climate czar, the special envoy on climate, and Kerry helped negotiate the bilateral agreement with China some years ago under the Obama administration that laid the ground for the Paris Treaty, the Paris Agreement, which he also negotiated for the United States. He at least put forward climate legislation as a senator 10 years ago. It didn't pass, but he was involved in the effort to make sure that there's also legislative action as well as executive action. And he has been an ambassador to the rest of the world. So he's the perfect person for that position. And then you've got, now I'm going to forget her name, Gina McCarthy, the former EPA administrator, who's now been appointed sort of the domestic climate leader for the United States in the new administration. And she was a wonderful EPA administrator, really cracked down on polluters, really advanced, the EPA as a way of implementing domestic policies to limit carbon emissions, the Clean Power Plan, better fuel efficiency standards, things that have been sort of pushed to the wayside by the Trump administration. Gina McCarthy helped put those in place originally, and she's a wonderful person to coordinate our domestic efforts to make sure we have our own house in order, because if we're going to go to the rest of the world and say, hey, we really need to do more, the United States has to have credibility on this issue. And we had that credibility under Obama. We lost it under Trump. We can now regain it under Biden.
I understand that we offer the fossil fuel industry broadly about $600 to $700 billion a year in subsidies.
That's right.
Taxpayers, you and I, are basically handing money to this industry. And I don't know if that includes the cost of our Navy protecting shipping lanes that are moving oil all around the world, but that's an added cost. Do you see any real possibility that those subsidies could be done away with? And if so, what's the path to that?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and you're absolutely right. It's just absolutely inconceivable. Maybe I don't know what that word means, but the fact that we're providing subsidies to the fossil fuel industry, to energy interests that are basically destroying the planet, and not providing similar incentives for renewable energy is just crazy, right? It's perverse. It's a perverse incentive structure. We need to level the playing field, and that's part of why we need to provide subsidies to renewable energy industry. We need to put a price on carbon. I think that's an important tool in the toolbox. Some progressives recently have sort of started to back off in their support for carbon pricing. I think it's one of a number of important tools. We basically have to use every tool that's available to us, and carbon pricing is part of it. But another important thing that you're alluding to is to not provide, subsidies for developing additional fossil fuel infrastructure. No funding and no financing for new fossil fuel industry infrastructure. And the Biden administration has indicated they're committed to that as well.
That's very good news. We're talking with Dr. Michael Mann, professor of meteorology and the director of the Earth System Science Center at Penn State University. His new book, The New Climate War.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And his new book lays out, it really is new. There's a whole shift in strategy here. They've left behind the tobacco industry strategies. Now they're moving on. Welcome back. Dr. Mann, in the 4 minutes until we hit the next break, I'm wondering if you could briefly describe, we use these words like catastrophic climate change or mitigate harms. And these are just not wild generalizations, they're broad generalizations. They're phrases that I think the average American has no idea what they mean. So if we just keep doing exactly what we're doing right now as a world and as a country, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years down the road, what will the world be like? How will people's experience change? And then maybe after the break, you can talk about, how things would be different from that if we were to, engage in various levels of mitigation.
Yeah, I mean, if we don't act, now, we've already been given a glimpse of what our future will look like. The scenes that we saw coming out of Australia last summer, where I was spending a sabbatical. Of course, their summers are winter. They're just going into their next summer now, and already they're starting to see that same extreme heat and wildfires, bushfires breaking out. The scenes we've seen coming out of Australia, but even not nearly so far afield, the scenes that we've seen in California, in Colorado, in Oregon, and Washington, the devastation that's already being wrought by climate-caused weather disasters, unprecedented heat waves and droughts and wildfires and superstorms. The hurricane season, the most active hurricane season we've ever seen in the Atlantic, 30 named storms. That's not a coincidence. We're making the ocean warmer. It's a more favorable environment for these storms, and we're seeing more of those extremely damaging, extremely dangerous sort of Category 5, Category 4, Category 5 hurricanes that intensify ever more rapidly now because the ocean is warmer, and the faster they intensify, the more likely they are to catch us off guard, and we don't have enough advance time for evacuations and for preparation. So, look, dangerous climate change, we don't have to use our imagination to envision it. It's already here by some measure, and the question is, how bad are we willing to let it get? How much worse do we want to let it get?
So it's a matter of increasingly violent tornadoes and hurricanes, increasingly, drowning like rats, rainstorms, right, increasing droughts, more wildfires. That basically what we're seeing amplified. How rapidly? How extreme could it get if we do nothing?
Yeah, and the melting ice, which is leading to rising sea level, and that combines with these superstorms to create sort of unprecedented risks to our coastlines, and not just here in the United States, low-lying island nations around the world, other coastal regions. 25% of the global population is in an area that is threatened by these coastal threats. So how much worse can it get? Hollywood has sort of given us a glimpse of how bad it can get, right? If we really do nothing to stem the tide, to do something, we do nothing about the climate problem. We don't get off the burning of fossil fuels. We allow the planet to continue to warm up, 7, 8, 9 degrees Fahrenheit over the next century, which is a possibility if we don't act. Our future will not look unlike some of the dystopian futures that Hollywood has given us. You name your favorite, post-apocalyptic film. That's what our future will look like if we don't act.
Wow. Okay. We'll be right back. It's coming up on 10 minutes before the hour. We're talking with Dr. Michael Mann. The Hartmann Report is a free daily podcast, 7 days a week, and you can find our entire 3-hour podcast over at thomhartmann.com. Hey, we've got a new video up over at thomhartmann.com for people who are regular supporters of our program that talks about the list of things that if Democrats did them, they would never lose another election. And I mean that quite sincerely and quite seriously. And part of the proof of it is that Donald Trump campaigned on a number of these things, and millions of Republicans voted for him because of them. A couple of them, for example, Donald Trump promised he was going to stop crazy trade deals and stop companies from exporting jobs. He was going to force Apple to bring their factories back to America. Well, Democrats need to be talking about this, and they have been forever. I mean, this is Bernie and Sherrod Brown and these guys all with these things. Donald Trump said he was going to give everybody in America health care. He said we were going to get debt-free college. There's a whole bunch of stuff. You can check it all out. It's the new video. It's over at thomhartmann.com. Thanks for your support. Tag You're It. Dr. Michael Mann with us. We were just talking about what happens if we do nothing. And Dr. Mann, you said that, imagine your most dystopian novel I'm thinking Waterworld or Blade Runner or whatever. That could be the world a couple of decades or by the end of the century anyway, and numerous decades down the road. On the other hand, if we do take action, I guess there's a spectrum of actions, from really aggressive action worldwide to more modest actions in the developed world, for example, things like that. How far have we gone in terms of not being able to, recover Arctic ice, not being able to recover our glaciers on the tops of mountains that feed giant rivers that nourish literally billions of humans around the world? How far have we gone, and what accommodations are we going to have to make to the world, even with really aggressive mitigation?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. It's a great question, and the reality is that we've already gone way too far down this road, and there's a fair amount of permanent damage that's already been done that is essentially undoable. We may well now have melted enough ice that we will see literally meters of sea level rise over the next few centuries. If we're lucky, it will take some time to unfold. And so in the best case scenario, we will have to cope with, if you like to call it a new normal, a new set of circumstances that challenge our infrastructure, that challenge our ability to feed and provide space and water for, nearly 8 billion and growing people on a finite planet. Now, as we were talking about before, Hollywood, these sort of post-apocalyptic dystopian futures are one possible set of futures if we fail to act completely. We will see civilization collapse under those pressures if we do nothing about this problem. But science fiction has also given rise to more utopian sorts of visions as well. And I don't know if you've ever had the science fiction author Kim Stanley Robinson on your show before. He'd be an interesting interview for you, I think, because he has recently published. He's done a lot of work in this area of sort of climate fiction. He's well known for the Mars trilogy, but recently he published a book, The Ministry for the Future, which I think is a wonderful book. And I had the pleasure of actually doing an event with him some weeks ago as he was rolling out this new book. And it sort of presents that future. It presents sort of a best case scenario where, look, we've got to cope with the damage that's been done. And there's a fair amount of damage that's been done. And there's some that's already, that's additionally still baked in that we're going to need to deal with. But if we act now, it's still possible to have a livable future where our children and grandchildren can thrive on this planet and can thrive with a clean energy economy where we get rid of the dirty energy that plagues human civilization, not just through climate change, but all the other health threats and environmental threats that it brings. And so a good future is still possible. Read the Ministry for Future if you want a vision of what our future still can look like. And that's really important to recognize, that it's entirely up to us at this point. We have agency. We can decide our future. Do we want to go down this road, to continue to go down the fossil fuel highway to an ever more degraded planet that resembles the dystopian futures of Hollywood? Or do we want to pursue a more utopian future like that depicted by Kim Stanley Robinson? That's still a possible future. Let's preserve that future for our children and grandchildren.
We just have a little more than a minute left. I understand that the kind of net carbon zero, Greta Thunberg has been talking about this, that, there's all kinds of stuff in there that just isn't really solution stuff. Is there an individual movement that we should be looking to, or a document or a book that, in addition to your new book, the New Climate War, that can give us, a blueprint?
No, my book really answers any question you could ever possibly. No, I'm just kidding. There are a number of wonderful books out there right now, and of course that phenomenon where I'm going to be unable to list them all. But Project Drawdown is a great place to start for all of the things that we can do in our daily lives to help be part of the solution to this problem. Of course, policy voting is really critical, and let's hope that those two runoffs end up going in the Democratic direction, because that's the only way we'll get a climate bill on the U.S. Senate floor in the next few years. Let me just talk a little bit, since you asked about sort of net zero. What does this mean? We have to be not adding any carbon pollution to the atmosphere, arguably even sooner than mid-century, maybe 2040, if we want to avoid catastrophic warming of more than 1.5 degrees Celsius, 3 degrees Fahrenheit with any degree of confidence. Maybe drawing down carbon through artificial means, through massive forestation, maybe that's part of the solution, but we can't allow that to be a crutch for not taking the immediate measures necessary to stop adding carbon pollution to the atmosphere. And some of these schemes that Greta and others complain about to achieve net zero sort of kick the can down the road too much, allow us to pollute now.
Sir, we're out of time. I'm sorry.
Take the carbon back out.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
Dr. Mann, thank you.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are CB Distillery, CBD for sleeping. More info at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. The Clean Phone Pro phone sanitizer and charger. More info at thenewdealshop.com. ExpressVPN, the VPN that just works. More information at expressvpn.com/Tom. X-Chair, changing the world one seat at a time. More information at xchairtom.com. Bloomsy Box, simply better blooms. More info available at bloomsybox.com, code TOM. And Boll & Branch Sheets, crafted for the common good. More info at bollandbranch.com, code TOM.
Well, we're getting there slowly but surely, but we still haven't hit our fundraising goals, even our daily goals, much less our goal for the entire fundraising drive here. So we really need your help. If you've not contributed to Free Speech TV in the past, now is a great time to become a member of Free Speech TV and make a contribution. You can make a one-time contribution of whatever size you'd like. There are some premiums. I'll go over those in just a moment. Or you can make an ongoing contribution, or you can do both. You can say, hey, I'd like that book about oligarchy when it comes out, autographed by Thom Hartmann. That would be great. I know somebody I'd like to read it, or I know somebody I'd like to give it to as a gift. And that's $120. So here's my $120. And oh, by the way, after you do that, in future months, going forward, just take $10 a month off my credit card, or whatever's comfortable or appropriate for you. 15, 20, 5. Pick the amount. Each one of us has a different budget, shall we say, a different ability to help. But it's really needed right now. We really need your help right now. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and help Free Speech TV. It's a great television network. Help Free Speech TV really make this work. And also, please, the other thing that you could do that's a big help for all of us, but especially for this television network, for Free Speech TV, is to let your friends know about Free Speech TV. And tell them about my program or Randy's program or Democracy Now! Or Sonali. I mean, there's just there's great programming on this network, and more people need to know about it. You can help. So there's all these things that we can do, but right now we've got to focus like a laser because we've just got a couple days left. If we hit our goals, then Andrew from San Diego is going to match it, or is going to toss in another $10,000 to push us over the top. That will really help a lot. But first we have to hit our goal, and we're not there yet. The other reason to hit the goal, aside from Andrew's matching grant, as it were, his contribution, is the fact that we need to keep this network going. We need to keep the lights on. We need to keep people in Denver employed. It's pretty straightforward stuff. When you're funded by your viewers have to kick in. And so please, if you can, I realize, many of you watching just don't have the ability right now. I honor that. But I also know that a lot of people watching right now, listening to my voice right now, have never contributed to Free Speech TV. In fact, the majority of people who watch this program have never contributed to Free Speech TV. And here's your chance. Here's a great opportunity. And you will get something out of it beyond just a really good feeling that you've helped out and that you've been part of the solution and not the problem. You'll also connect with a whole new network is not quite the right word to describe a television network, but you'll become part of something that's really extraordinary, this television network. So the goodies that they offer with contributions, one-time contributions, with a $20 gift, you have your choice between the proud student of Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker or the Fight for Democracy sticker, the Free Speech TV Fight for Democracy sticker. With a $50 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV webcam cover or the really nice canvas tote bag. We've been using these as premiums for a couple of years now, although I think that this slogan on this one is new. But these canvas tote bags are really nice. They're really well made. And this one says, change never happens from the top down, channeling Margaret Mead. With a $75 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV black hat or the official Thom Hartmann Program mug, which is just like very cool, right? So that's with $75. With a $100 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV, 2 Free Speech TV face masks or the Quarantine 2020 with Free Speech TV tumbler, which I keep saying I think is going to be a collector's item someday. With a $120 gift, your choice of the Free Speech, Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, my book, The Hidden History of Monopolies, which is out right now. All of my books here are autographed by the author. Or the new book, my new book, which will be out in the spring, but you'll be one of the very first people to get it, The Hidden History of American Oligarchy. With a $240 gift, you can join us for our online meet and greet, which is great fun. I always enjoy them. And interesting, I meet some extraordinary people, and I know some of the people who participated in these feel the same way. Or the Free Speech TV hoodie. Or both of my newest books, The Hidden History of Oligarchy and The Hidden History of Monopolies. With a that's $240. With a $360 gift, there is the Thom Hartmann University Winter Box. That includes The Hidden History of Oligarchy, The Hidden History of Monopolies, a set of 2 face masks, and the Free Speech TV 2020 Quarantine Tumbler. And with a $1,000 gift, we are going to have a party when this thing is over, this pandemic. It's probably going to be another 6 months, 9 months, something like that, but it's going to happen. And you're invited. With a $1,000 gift, come to Portland, and we will hang out together. So those are the premiums. Let me highlight the books. The Monopoly book is, I think, Ralph Nader wrote the foreword for it and said he thought it was the best book on monopolies that had been written in decades. And the Oligarchy book is really about one of the biggest issues of our times. So there's a lot there. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and be sure to sign up for a regular monthly contribution. Thank you.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. I'll be getting back to your phone calls in just a few minutes. It's just you and me this hour, but there's a couple things I wanted to share with you first. At the top of the list is that there is a new article out in The Nation magazine, or at least on The Nation magazine's website, thenation.com, that just came out this morning. And it's titled, Talk Radio, Democrats Can't Win If They Don't Play. And it's by a guy you might be familiar with, me. But the subhead is, the vast right-wing talk show network across the United States has enormous political sway, and Republican politicians know and embrace it. And, a lot of it is stuff that you've heard from me before, and so I'm not going to, exhaustively go through it again, other than to point out that politics is a game that is typically played in terms of winning and losing elections on the margins. It's around the edges. If you can shave 2 or 3 points off your opponent by, say, for example, putting so few voting machines in your opponent's neighborhoods that people have to stand in line for 8 hours to vote, if that can discourage just 1 or 2 or 3% of the people from voting or cause them to quit the line and have to go back to work, you can win an election. Well, similar, and of course we all know this has been, a major Republican strategy for the better part of 40 years now, to make it particularly in black neighborhoods, in Hispanic neighborhoods, in communities where you've got a lot of students, and in communities where there are a lot of very elderly people who might be voting Social Security and Medicare, typically Democratic issues. And so, that's what Republican voter suppression is all about. But the other main strategy that the Republican Party has been using in a big way since the mid-1990s, and Newt Gingrich was a real pioneer in this, in using talk radio this way, is talk radio, is right-wing talk radio all across the United States. There is literally not any part of the United States with any population of any consequence. I mean, you might have on some mountaintop in Utah where you can't, well, even there, you can get a radio signal. I genuinely believe there's no place in America where you cannot just turn on your car radio and tune across the dial and find right-wing hate radio. On the other hand, if you want progressive talk radio, if you want to hear, conversation about the issues from the point of view of the Democratic Party or from the point of view of progressives, good luck. I mean, there's some great stations in this country, but they are not in every city. They're not even in every blue state. We have entire blue states with no progressive radio stations. Sirius XM, the Progress Channel, God bless them. I mean, the holding the fort here. And I know, many of you, a large percentage of you are listening to me right now on Sirius XM, and we are so grateful for that clearance. And Sirius XM has been expanding this now with they've got an app, and you can listen to them on the web, and you don't have to have a satellite receiver anymore unless you want it in your car. And if you have it in your car, of course, you can literally drive from coast to coast and never lose the signal. It's a pretty amazing thing. But with conservative talk radio, it's everywhere. It's ubiquitous. And if the Republican Party had to rent, they call it lease actually in the industry, but if they had to rent all the right-wing radio stations in America that run 24/7 right-wing talk radio, and in many cities, well, here in Portland, we've got 3 different right-wing stations. And they're big signals. In fact, the biggest signal in the state is a right-wing station. And so, if the Republican Party had to actually rent that time, it would cost them $5 billion a year. Now, the Democratic Party has stations, as I said, in a few cities. We've got, we're growing. And we've got a lot of nonprofit stations that are popping up, and Pacifica stations that are picking up more and more progressive talk and that kind of thing. But by and large, it's been right-wing media, and it's been right-wing media not because there's not an audience for left-wing talk. People say, well, when the article came out, in fact, I had a number of people on Twitter going, yeah, but Air America failed. Well, let's see. Air America was on 54 stations that they were renting or leasing, or that they had cooperative barter agreements with with Clear Channel, what was then called the Clear Channel Radio Network. Clear Channel has over 800 radio stations all across the country. Mitt Romney's Bain Capital bought Clear Channel. Clear Channel then started dropping progressive talk from their stations all across the country. And surprise, surprise, in 5 years, Clear Channel was $17 million in debt. That was their bankruptcy, $17 million. Now, to put that in context, the first year that Rupert Murdoch ran Fox News, he lost $100 million. The second year that he ran Fox News, he lost $80 million. And according to Brit Hume, it was 5 years before he made $1 on Fox News. He lost several $100 million. Air America went bankrupt on $17 million. And much of that, yes, there was some, incompetent management. I'll give you that. Randy Rhodes and I were yelling about it at the time. But by and large, when you start losing radio stations and you depend on advertising revenue to stay in business, Mitt Romney killed the network, you could say. Now, that certainly wasn't the only thing that was going on, but, I've told you the story about meeting with the billionaire owner of one of the three big radio networks in the United States, over 600-700 radio stations, a good chunk of them carrying right-wing radio, and I said to him, would you put progressive radio on any of your stations? He had just bought the network that was syndicating my show. And he said, no, we're not going to put that on any of them. Zero. And I'm like, why? And he's like, well, because I'm not going to put people on the air who say that my taxes should go up. And then another time, there was another radio network, Salem Radio, that has Dennis Prager and Hugh Hewitt on it. And I was sitting next to one of their senior executives at a talkers luncheon. This was maybe a decade ago. And I said, hey, you ever thought about putting progressives on? And he says, no, it hurt our brand. Plus, we're a company that started out as a Bible publishing company. We only put real Christians on the air. And I'm like, I'm a real Christian. And he's like, no, you're not. You're a liberal. It wasn't, that's not a literal, this is my recollection of the conversation. I didn't write down every word he said. But that was the essence of what he said. So this isn't about progressive talk radio can't work. We have stations, we've got a channel on Sirius XM, we've got stations around the country where it does work. It's just that, basically since Reagan stopped enforcing the Sherman Act, you've got large swaths of the American radio infrastructure now owned by people who have right-wing agendas for various reasons. And what I'm saying is that Democrats need to start taking this seriously, that the Democratic Party should put together a talk radio caucus. Talk radio is how Dave Bratt took down Eric Cantor, the second or third most powerful politician in the House of Representatives, probably the fifth most powerful politician in the United States. Back in the day, that was talk radio that took him down. Talk radio was what killed the public option for Obamacare. Right-wing talk radio, by getting Scott Brown elected, a guy who nobody thought had a chance. And I lay all this out in the article. You can find it over at thenation.com right now. It's called Talk Radio. Democrats can't win if they don't play. And, I've tried to reach out to some of our wealthy donors and say, hey, why don't you invest in some radio stations? We have 1,500 right-wing radio stations in the United States, and probably fewer than 50 on the left. And a lot fewer than that if you're looking at commercial stations. And this is something that I think this is a big issue. So anyhow, there's that. You don't have to call about that. I just wanted to flag it for you. I wanted to sensitize it to you. There's also a new article out over at Vox.com about the long-term symptoms of COVID. And this is pretty damn shocking stuff. I'll share some of that with you on the other side of the break, and we'll pick up your phone calls.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We've covered all kinds of territory today between climate and our conversations with Mark Pocan. Any of those topics, give me a shot. And welcome back. Courtney in Brooklyn, New York. Hey, Courtney, thanks for watching us on Facebook Live. What's up?
Hey, good afternoon, Tom. Just wanted to shed some light on the points from Dr. Mann. comments from the rights of nature, the discussion you had yesterday, and the underlying narrative of Reaganomics. Just want to say, when it comes to Dr. Mann, he was talking about fossil fuel companies being more concerned about the destination and of inaction or non-action to create an environment of hopelessness. The solution involves the non-action being the journey, gathering thoughts and focusing our paradigms on what the solution or destination should really be. And, this also connects to the narrative of Reaganomics, where with the rights of nature, where those who funded Reagan knew all about the exploitation of nature and its natural system. This is where politics originated its systematic structures and processes. That nature has its natural structure and everything, and has basically been manufactured by the psyche of groups of individuals who educated themselves. So it's a blatant psychological copy of the system of nature without taking steps to include honoring the origin of human ideas and concepts. The cause and effect is a manufactured copy of nature without incorporating nature itself is inherently unsustainable. By neglecting nature, toxic nature forces people to subjugate, divide, and oppress each other into separate classes in order to sustain themselves and prevent the epiphany of fundamental nature as the true origin of systems and government from being born into humanity's minds. So, I was just...
No, I'm listening. Finish your thought. I thought you were done.
I wanted some feedback.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I think you're absolutely right, Courtney, and I think your analysis, a deep structural analysis, is a really important one. The one thing I would add to it is disaster capitalism. I mean, look at what happened in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina.
Exactly.
The black part, the largely African-American part of New Orleans, I believe it was called the 9th Parish, if I'm remembering correctly, or the 9th Ward, got wiped out. A lot of it still hasn't been rebuilt. It was just basically an opportunity for gentrification and pushing minorities out. And we see this over and over and over again all across the country, where natural disasters are used as excuses to marginalize people who have already been suffering oppression for centuries. And so there's environmental racism as well. What do you think?
This is true. What I think is necessary is a systematic reappointing of distributing utilities and freight and transportation sectors. As to when it comes to Reaganomics, it's a type of reverse symbolism, if you would, but not symbolism as of ideology. Because the structure and the system, the way it's directed, is made to basically add as a detriment, but it could be repositioned where if it's focused, it can re-encourage the economy. Just like we're building all the schools and the roads, we need that again now. We have more than enough capital to get it done, and that's
I gotta run. Courtney, spot on. Thank you. We'll be right back. Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. We're available on SiriusXM, Free Speech TV, Pacifica, commercial stations nationwide, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, on the Thom Hartmann app, and you can even tell your smart speaker to listen to the Thom Hartmann Program. Hey, we have a new video for supporters of our program over at thomhartmann.com. It's about curing type 1 diabetes, which is a pretty amazing thing. Type 1 diabetes is where the cells in the pancreas that produce insulin are actually destroyed. They're gone. Type 1 diabetics, typically it shows up in childhood, and without insulin, people die from it fairly young. With insulin, they can live a good long life, but a University of Alberta researcher, Dr. James Shapiro, back in 1990 pioneered a transplant system Now, the problem with that was that people had to use immunosuppressive drugs for the rest of their lives because they had just gotten, a partial pancreas transplant from another person. But now he's successfully on mice worked out a way of actually curing type 1 diabetes. We can't do it legally here in the United States, but they're doing it in Canada. It's amazing. You can check it out at thomhartmann.com. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you and Michael in Bangor, Maine. Hey, Michael, what's on your mind today?
Good afternoon, Tom. I've been listening for about half an hour, 45 minutes. And what I wanted to bring up with you, because particularly in relation to your last caller, it seems quite obvious to me, and I just want to get your comments on it. And it seems to me that the whole concept of the change that people on the left are advocating can only be achieved in your minds. And when I say your minds, I'm not trying to say anything negative towards you. I'm just saying it seems to me that the only way that this is ever going to work is that you appoint planners who Hayek always identified as the socialist structure and use government coercion. And I'm wondering if you agree with that concept.
No, I strongly disagree with it, Michael. I think that if we pulled the $600 billion a year, and actually I saw a report yesterday that suggests it's actually between $700 and $800 billion a year, and that does not include our military subsidies to the fossil fuel industry for the transportation of fossil fuels to and from the United States. But if we were simply to pull that $600 to $800 billion a year in taxpayer dollars that you and I are giving to the fossil fuel industry tomorrow morning would become completely uncompetitive. Right now, wind power, solar power, and geothermal power are all cheaper than producing electricity or any kind of locomotion using fossil fuels. SAS Airlines, the Scandinavian Airlines, and the country of Norway and the country of Iceland are collaborating on a project. In 2 years, they're going to be rolling out electric airplanes, electric jets, actually. High altitude, high performance aircraft. Just this week, there was announced. Tesla, in part, did the announcement. Just a massive change in battery technology now, where they're going with all silicon anodes and in one kind of new battery, and another kind of new battery has solid blocks of lithium with them that increase the capacity of these batteries. Not doubling it, but increasing it by 5-fold or 10-fold, or in some cases 30-fold, which means that the electric car that you can buy right now for pretty much the same cost as a gasoline car, and it has a hell of a lot fewer moving parts, it'll last a lot longer, that right now will go 200 miles on a charge, could go a couple of thousand miles on a charge. Fossil fuels are no longer economically viable or sustainable. They simply aren't without these subsidies. So what you're saying Hayek would be accusing me of is exactly what the fossil fuel industry and the Republican Party have been doing.
Well, guess what? You're going to get an agreement out of a civil libertarian.
Okay.
I don't believe that as long as when you say eliminating the subsidies, you're talking about money being given by the feds. I'm not talking if you're implying that the subsidies are the tax breaks that they have, that's a different issue. But if they're getting...
It's about 30% of it is tax breaks, about 70% of it is direct cash to them.
They shouldn't get a nickel of it because that will force them...
I agree. I agree, and I don't think they should get tax breaks either. I think the oil depletion allowance is crazy. It was okay, you drilled an oil well, and as you're taking oil out of it, it's going to reduce in value, so we're going to give you a tax break on all your other profits to compensate you for the loss of value because eventually that well's going to run dry. That's crazy. We don't do that in any other industry.
I agree, but what I think would happen, and I just posed this to you, that get the government out of subsidizing fossil fuels. They will then, these corporations, if they want to survive, are going to have to look at better ways to do what they have done traditionally. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to get rid of fossil fuels in 10 minutes. It's not going to happen. But I absolutely believe in the notion that if it's a free market with no subsidies for any kind of free market enterprise, that market will work better than governmental structure and redistribution.
Yeah, generally speaking, I don't entirely disagree with you, Michael. Where I think probably I disagree with some folks who are so-called free market enthusiasts is that there really is no such thing as a free market. Markets are created by government. The rules of the marketplace are created by government. And you can't get away from that. Somebody has to define the rules. You have to have courts to enforce those rules. You have to have jails to put people like the Enron guys in jail when they break those rules. And a lot of the rules right now, in fact, the vast majority of the rules right now, are tilted in the direction of private ownership of our utilities, and of subsidies to the fossil fuel industry. And I think that needs to change. And we know now that alternative energies are viable. I mean, Norway just said, no more internal combustion engines. And it wasn't just because of fossil fuels. It's because internal combustion engines are creating somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 cancers a year in Norway. No, it was 500 to 1,000 cancers in Norway. Norway is a small country. In the United States, it's 5,000 to 10,000. They have a national health care system. They didn't want to have to pay for it. Michael, we'll continue the conversation at another time, but thank you for the call. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
28 minutes past the hour. Stick around. We'll be right back. Hi, it's the Thom Hartmann Book Club. Well, we're getting there slowly but surely, but we still haven't hit our fundraising goals, even our daily goals, much less our goal for the entire fundraising drive here. So we really need your help. If you've not contributed to Free Speech TV in the past, now is a great time to become a member of Free Speech TV and make a contribution. You can make a one-time contribution of whatever size you'd like. There are some premiums. I'll go over those in just a moment. Or you can make an ongoing contribution, or you can do both. You can say, hey, I'd like that book about oligarchy when it comes out, autographed by Thom Hartmann. That would be great. I know somebody I'd like to read it, or I know somebody I'd like to give it to as a gift. And that's $120. So here's my $120. And oh, by the way, after you do that, in future months, going forward, just take $10 a month off my credit card, or whatever's comfortable or appropriate for you. 15, 20, 5. Pick the amount. Each one of us has a different budget, shall we say, a different ability to help. But it's really needed right now. We really need your help right now. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and help Free Speech TV. It's a great television network. Help Free Speech TV really make this work. And also, please, the other thing that you could do that's a big help for all of us, but especially for this television network, for Free Speech TV, is to let your friends know about Free Speech TV. And, tell them about my program or Randy's program or Democracy Now! Or, Sonali. I mean, there's just there's great programming on this network. And more people need to know about it. You can help. So there's all these things that we can do. But right now, we've got to focus like a laser because we've just got a couple days left. If we hit our goals, then Andrew from San Diego is going to match it, or is going to toss in another $10,000 to push us over the top. That will really help a lot. But first, we have to hit our goal, and we're not there yet. The other reason to hit the goal, aside from Andrew's matching grant, as it were, his contribution, is the fact that we need to keep this network going. We need to keep the lights on. We need to keep people in Denver employed. It's pretty straightforward stuff. When you're funded by your viewers have to kick in. And so please, if you can, I realize, many of you watching just don't have the ability right now. I honor that. But I also know that a lot of people watching right now, listening to my voice right now, have never contributed to Free Speech TV. In fact, the majority of people who watch this program have never contributed to Free Speech TV. And here's your chance. Here's a great opportunity. And you will get something out of it beyond just a really good feeling
that you've helped out and that you've been part of the solution and not the problem. You'll also connect with a whole new network is not quite the right word to describe a television network, but you'll become part of something that's really extraordinary, this television network. So the goodies that they offer with contributions, one-time contributions, with a $20 gift, you have your choice between the Proud Student of Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker or the Fight for Democracy sticker, the Free Speech TV Fight for Democracy sticker. With a $50 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV webcam cover or the really nice canvas tote bag. We've been using these as premiums for a couple of years now, although I think that this slogan on this one is new. But these canvas tote bags are really nice. They're really well made. And this one says, change never happens from the top down, channeling Margaret Mead. With a $75 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV black hat or the official Thom Hartmann Program mug, which is just very cool, right? So that's with $75. With a $100 gift, you have your choice of the Free Speech TV, 2 Free Speech TV face masks or the Quarantine 2020 with Free Speech TV tumbler, which I keep saying I think is going to be a collector's item someday. With a $120 gift, your choice of the Free Speech, Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, my book, The Hidden History of Monopolies, which is out right now. All of my books here are autographed by the author. Or the new book, my new book, which will be out in the spring, but you'll be one of the very first people to get it, The Hidden History of American Oligarchy. With a $240 gift, you can join us for our online meet and greet, which is great fun. I always enjoy them. And interesting, I meet some extraordinary people, and I know some of the people who have participated in these feel the same way. Or the Free Speech TV hoodie. Or both of my newest books, The Hidden History of Oligarchy and The Hidden History of Monopolies. With a that's $240. With a $360 gift, there is the Thom Hartmann University Winter Box. That includes The Hidden History of Oligarchy, The Hidden History of Monopolies, a set of 2 face masks, and the Free Speech TV 2020 Quarantine Tumbler. And with a $1,000 gift, we are going to have a party when this thing is over, this pandemic. It's probably going to be another 6 months, 9 months, something like that, but it's going to happen. And you're invited. With a $1,000 gift, come to Portland and we will hang out together. So those are the premiums. Let me highlight the books. The Monopoly book is, I think, Ralph Nader wrote the foreword for it and said he thought it was the best book on monopolies that had been written in decades. And the Oligarchy book is really about one of the biggest issues of our times. So there's a lot there. So please call now, 877-378-8669, and be sure to sign up for a regular monthly contribution. Thank you. Red and blue climate New Deal. That vision includes Native Americans, a blue New Deal for our threatened oceans, and a green New Deal for our coastal communities. Dr. Michael Greger joins us. Have you gained a few COVID pounds? In his new How Not to Diet cookbook, Dr. Greger tells how you can eat your way to a healthy, sustainable weight with plant-based meals. Terry Mills, president of the National Nursing Network, drops by on why a national nurse for public health is important. Plus, Laura Packard, the founder of Healthcare Voices, explains open enrollment under the ACA to help the 16+ million uninsured Americans get themselves enrolled. Tune into the Science Revolution wherever fine podcasts are found. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. I was just going through all this information on long COVID, and it's a really deep dive. I'm going to move this to tomorrow, make it a conversation for tomorrow, because I really want to do it right. So plan on that. It's the science that's coming out right now. Now that scientists are speaking in the federal government, scientists are increasingly unafraid to speak out because Trump's on his way out, is shocking. And I'll share all that with you tomorrow. Richard in Dallas, Texas. Hey, Richard, what's on your mind today?
Yes, I'm in dialysis right now, so I hope can you understand what I say, but I've read a scholarly book about Germany as he came to power, and there was an overabundance of conservative radio versus liberal radio.
You're right. And not only that, there was a program. I used to know the German name for it, but it was not a radio show, but this was radio stations all across the country. People were encouraged to call in and on the air report their neighbors for disloyalty, for not being loyal to to Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. And then when they reported their neighbors, these roving bands and gangs of right-wing thugs would show up at their houses, drag them out of their houses, beat them up in the streets, sometimes set their houses on fire. This was a big part in the mid-30s. This was 33, 34, 35. Yes. Yeah, Richard, thank you for the call. Thank you for that. In fact, I learned that from The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, William Scherer's book, the classic book on that. Tim in Westmore, Vermont. Hey, Tim, what's on your mind?
Hi, Tom. I'm proposing that somehow we reconfigure National Public Radio into a progressive talk radio format. It's a national network of stations. They're in every city, every college town. Boy, I tell you, we could really jumpstart this quickly. The CPB, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, hardly gives any more money to NPR, thanks to Reagan and to Gingrich and others. And I think that NPR
I think federal funds are now around 7% of their budget. Most of it is raised locally. And, the problem that you have there, Tim, I remember back, I believe it was in the 1980s. It might have been a little later than that, but I'm pretty sure, my recollection is this is when Reagan was president, that NPR they used to do investigative reporting. And, I mean, they still do, but and they busted Archer's Daniel Midland for ADM for the biggest price-fixing scheme in the history of the United States. It involved vitamin C, as I recall, which they were manufacturing, which is made out of corn. And it cost, and ADM got hit with a $300 million fine, which back in the 80s was one of the largest fines any corporation had ever been hit with in history. Within a year, one of the main sponsors of NPR was ADM, supermarket to the world. And that, and I remember hearing that thinking, okay, I wonder how much more investigative reporting we're going to hear that exposes corporate crime. Over the short term, this might be a great way to get these corporations to underwrite you. They don't call it advertising, but it's essentially the same thing. But over the long term, I don't think this will work for them. Being aggressive investigative journalists, and I think that time has borne that out. I do think that we need basic news across the country, and I think NPR in the radio sphere and CPB or public television, on TV, provide that. And God bless them. We really do need just a good authoritative source of news. But that's a completely different thing from progressive talk radio. And
that's true.
There have been some local shows. When I lived in D.C., there was the Tavis Smiley show in D.C., and Diane Rehm used to have a show in D.C. She didn't so much wear her politics, on her shoulder, or on her arm, but Smiley did to a larger extent. Even those shows have largely been replaced by shows that are far more anodyne. I mean, Terry Gross, she does brilliant interviews, but very rarely does she touch on politics. So talk radio, right wing or left wing, are really just a different animal. And I don't think that there's going to be an organized effort to take over the board of directors of CPB or NPR any day soon.
I was thinking it's a great opportunity to just jumpstart it quickly and just get back into it.
It would be. But I don't think it's going to work. Keep thinking. Good thinking, Tim. Thank you. John in North Bend, Oregon. Hey, John, what's up?
Oh, thank you for taking my call, Tom. I wanted to drop back on the subject of right-wing radio stations on the AM show. Down here in North Bend, which is a sister city to Coos Bay, we've had one of the only progressive radio stations in Oregon for years. It's 1340 KBBR.
Yeah, we've been on the air there for 17 years, I think.
I know. Followed you every year. Love your program. You're the light in the day. What I'm reporting is that they have now been taken over with both Newsmax and Fox News for their hourly news breaks. And so we're getting this garbage. I mean, literally garbage, you know. Nancy Pelosi was seen at the airport without a mask and, you know, stuff like that. Anyway, I think they're being taken over by the right-wing media. But more
well, it could be, or it could be that somebody incentivized the station management and ownership. I mean, one of the things that I don't want to do, John, is be micromanaging or criticizing any of our affiliates. You know, if an affiliate wants to carry right-wing content, God bless them. You know, I think that there should be a marketplace of ideas, and individual radio stations should do what they think is the very best for themselves and for their markets. But I'm telling you, you know, progressive talk radio can work. John, thank you for the call. Larry in Chicago. Hey, Larry, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Perfect segue. I wanted to report to you some numbers because I'm 63 years old and I've been listening to radio since I could listen to Wally Phillips on WGN in Chicago. Just a quick primer. Just a quick primer. You know, clear channel radio stations are 50,000 watts. And here in Chicago, because we're in the middle of the country with nothing but flat land forever, WGN used to brag about that at night they could skip across the ionosphere and reach 2/3 of the 38 states in the U.S. and 1/3 of Canada. Now we've got 6 clear channel stations in Chicago. 2 of them are owned by right-wing screamers. And WCPT is sitting there at AM 820. They are not clear channel. They turn their transmitter up, they power up, and they're on one of the frequencies that is clear channel, so they have to give way at night. So they turn their transmitter down at sunset and turn it up at sunrise.
It's tough in the winter. Yeah, and that has to do with FCC licenses and you know, the value of radio stations and things like that. And again, these are kind of marketplace dynamics. And you know, and I am so grateful to WCPT and you know, the fellow who owns it and the people who work there because they have been in this for the long haul, and they've been in it through some rough times and some good times, and God bless them. But you know, you're right that some of the largest stations in the country are blowing out right-wing talk, and it's not because it's necessarily the most profitable. Talk radio is talk radio. Advertisers are advertisers, and talk radio will catch a marketplace. When we were on CBS in Seattle, for example, I regularly beat Rush Limbaugh on the ratings because we were on a 5,000 watt station and he was on a 5,000 watt station. It's just it's a matter of platform. Jim in Torrance, California. Hey, Jim, what's on your mind?
Hi, Tom. I just wanted to share with you the response to your thoughts about why Republicans, I guess, are doing so well. Is that has really every 10 years is the census and the redistricting and gerrymandering. That is so critical. Yep. I don't know if it's too late this year or not, but that's a critical factor of why why things are the way they are.
I am hopeful that they will be able to redo the census next year because Trump has rigged this thing, and you're absolutely right. You know, the last cycle, the 2010 cycle. This is why they worked so hard to take over state after state after state. I realize, you know, Obama was president, but this is tough stuff, and this is why Pennsylvania, for example, the majority of people in Pennsylvania voted for a Democrat for Congress, and yet the majority of the Congress people coming out of Pennsylvania are Republicans. In Wisconsin, the majority of people in Wisconsin voted for Democrats for Congress, yet the majority of the congressional delegation out of Wisconsin is Republican. This is because of gerrymandering, and those are not the only 2 states. Michigan also. This is the example of gerrymandering, as you defined, Jim. Spot on. And by the way, for those just tuning in, the talk radio conversation is around an article that I published today in thenation.com about the topic of talk radio.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's 45 minutes past the hour. Back with your calls in just a moment. And welcome back. Scott in Washington, D.C., watching us on Facebook. Hey, Scott, what's up?
Hello. I'd like to mention to you and your listeners that at Penn State University, some 20 years ago, there was a Dr. Gregory Grimes, who in the Department of Electrical Engineering, who was working on a technology involving titanium nanotubes that could generate combustible methanol fuel that could be used to power internal combustion engines and also be used to generate electricity. And that when this technology was really starting to kick off and he was getting good results in the laboratory, Congress pulled funding on it.
Because it threatened the fossil fuel industry?
I believe so. Of course, they didn't say that, but if you Google his name, Dr. Gregory Grimes, Grimes, Penn State, and also another keyword would be methanol fuel, you can get the whole story on him. And
sounds fascinating.
It is, and so few people have heard about this, and they don't think it's possible. But right now, the Navy is working on a process of generating jet fuel out of seawater.
Wow. Are you talking about hydrogen?
No. Well, it's actually a liquid fuel that you would be able to pump into the motor, just like gasoline, and burn it. You could put it in existing engines. Would have to be modified, of course. But
are you talking about the algae stuff?
No, I'm talking about using sunlight, titanium nanotubes, air, and water, which is basically what a plant does. A plant creates hydrocarbons out of
and
these.
Producing hydrocarbons that way.
Right, and
What's
it
the
may
source?
even be possible to sequester.
So the source of the carbon is carbon dioxide in the air, right?
Yes. And so what you're doing, well, you have two systems. You have like a closed system and an open system. And right now we're in an open system. And a closed system would be, if you've seen those little globes that have a fish and a plant in it, and you just leave it somewhere, and it just perpetuates. And that's a closed system. That's where the fish is producing carbon dioxide, the plant is producing oxygen and protein. And
the Earth.
Right. So you're taking carbon out of the air and you're burning it and you're putting it back into the air, but it's the same carbon you took out. Now, what we have is an open system where we're going into the ground and we're taking carbon out of the ground that has been sequestered over billions of years by plant life and putting it back into the air, which is dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. So we're treating the atmosphere like an open sewer, and and extracting carbon out of what were plants, hundreds of millions of years ago, during the Carboniferous period and other Eocenes. It's spot on, Scott. I'll have to look that up. What would the search terms be?
Dr. Grimes, Grimes. Penn State.
Okay, and titanium nanotubes?
Titanium nanotubes.
Okay, got it. Scott, thank you. Thanks for the tip. Some of the smartest people on earth listening to or watching this program. We'll be right back. Stick around. The Hartmann Report is a free daily podcast 7 days a week, and you can find our entire 3-hour podcast over at thomhartmann.com. Welcome back. 10 minutes before the hour. Thom Hartmann here with you. Doug in Denver. Hey, Doug, what's up?
Yeah, Tom, on radio, have you looked at the demographics of talk radio? Because my son said young people don't listen to it, and the millennials just took over the baby boomers in terms of population. He thinks it's not going to matter in a few years.
I would say probably over a 20-year horizon, yeah, maybe. I don't think these legacy radio stations or any of the radio stations are just going to go away, because it's a source of free data. You know, you don't have to connect to the internet to get it. You don't have to pay an internet service provider or any of that kind of thing. But you're absolutely right. The demographics of talk radio listeners, both conservative and progressive, tend to skew 40 plus and 50 plus, actually, heavily. The advantage over the short term of that, let's say over the next decade or two, is that is not only the population that has the most money right now, so they're attractive to advertisers because you can sell things to them. They're not the ones who have massive educational debt, and I mean they grew up before you went broke going to college, before Reagan's damage was fully done. And secondly, they vote in numbers that just overwhelm the young vote. So, and young listeners are more and more listening to podcasts. And one of the things that we found with this show, you know, we take our 3-hour show every day, and the full 3 hours are available as a subscription podcast, but we also boil it down to a 1-hour podcast that we put advertising in the front and middle and end of, just like a normal podcast. And that podcast now has got a huge following, and among young people. So I think that you can multi-purpose and multi-platform, and a lot of radio stations are doing this. I know our affiliate in Chicago, our affiliate in Minneapolis, both are building, you know, substantial web presences, and some of our other affiliates do as well. So I don't think that this is a dead end, radio. I don't think at all. Or if it is, it's going to be far enough down the road that, you know, my concern is the next 2 presidential election cycles. I'm looking at the next 8 years. If we don't get, you know, a solid progressive footprint in Washington, D.C., and Democratic control of the House, the Senate, and the White House for a long enough time to actually do something, I am very, very concerned that this country is just going to go we're either going to devolve into some form of civil war, and not necessarily a shooting one, but just, you know, and to some extent we're there, I suppose, a cold civil war. But also we're going to again flirt with authoritarianism, or we're going to continue to, because the next Republican president, I think, is going to be even worse than the last. So anyway, Doug, thanks for the call. Larry in Los Angeles. Hey, Larry, what's up?
Hey, I used to be a regular caller of right-wing talk radio, and so much so that I was actually rated by Talkers Magazine as one of the top 10. I only hit top 10, number 10, but I did reach that level a couple of times.
How about that, Larry?
And they started systematically eliminating my calls whenever we got near an election. And that indicates that they were aware that talk radio does influence elections. And I was hurting their chances of getting power.
Well, and the thing is, go ahead. I'm sorry. I thought you were done.
One of the programs that still took my calls after they started banning me for life, but one of the programs that still took my calls instituted a new policy while I was waiting online, and they stated that we're not going to let people call once a week anymore. From now on, you're going to have to start calling only once every 3 months, or 4 times a year versus 52 times a year. And I was still on the air. I was still online waiting for him to put me on the air, and he said these words over the air. He says, "When you lose your credibility, you have nothing." And then he clicked me offline, indicating I was hurting his brand. And this is what you talked about earlier. But I was hurting his brand, and when you hurt their brand, they get rid of you.
Yeah, I know. When I lived in Atlanta back in the 80s, I used to call into Neil Bortz's show, and he's a libertarian. He's no longer on the air, but we would have arguments about libertarianism, and he was willing to do that. But he was unusual in that regard, and by and large, and I think that, you know, I'm unusual, I suppose, in that regard, because if a conservative calls into my program, and from time to time you'll hear them calling in, when conservatives call into my program, I want to take them first, because I want to have those conversations, because I really and truly believe that my positions on Medicare for all, or doing away with student debt, or a Green New Deal, or reforming policing in the United States, I mean, you know, ending homelessness, I really believe that not only are my positions right, but that I have the data to defend those positions. And so I love having those conversations. But the guys on the right, they're selling BS, and they do not like it when you call their BS. Back to you, Larry.
I have the same opinion that you have regarding my positions. And what started happening before they banned me for life is they started putting me on hold, and there were several times where I would be on hold for 3 hours. I was a disagreeing caller, and they were putting me on hold for 3 hours. I had to go out and buy another cell phone, and I would call the radio station with a second cell phone and tell them, you're putting me on hold for 3 hours. And sometimes that would work, and it would put me on the air.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. And it's also economically crazy. I mean, it costs us 3 cents a minute to, for every caller. And, if somebody's on hold for hours, that's money. You just don't want to do that.
You know something that's funny? They actually told me that that was the case, and then they asked me, why would we do that?
Yeah, but it cost. Yeah, well, that's very strange. Yeah, because it costs us money. It doesn't cost the caller money, unless you've got a weird plan. But Larry, thanks a lot for the call. It's great to hear from you. Thank you all for being with us today. Once again, the article is in today's Nation. TheNation.com is the website, and it's about talk radio. You'll see it right there on their homepage. Check it out. Share it with your friends. And in particular, share it with your Democratic politicians. I think this is important stuff. Thanks for being with us today. Tag your it. Get out there, get active. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great afternoon. Be good to yourself and people around you. Go out of your way. We'll see you.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit ThomHartmann.com.
These companies support the Thom Hartmann Program. They are CB Distillery, CBD for sleeping. More info at cbdistillery.com, code TOM. The Clean Phone Pro phone sanitizer and charger. More info at thenewdealshop.com. ExpressVPN, the VPN that just works. More information at expressvpn.com/Tom. X-Chair, changing the world one seat at a time. More information at xchairtom.com. Bloomsy Box, simply better blooms. More info available at bloomsybox.com, code TOM. And Boll & Branch Sheets, crafted for the common good. More info at bollandbranch.com, code TOM.